Signature on these things. Good. Yeah, this is the just the minutes, and then the minutes and then just write it. That's going to be approved today. So I'm assuming no pass, but.
Okay. I leave them right there.
Yeah, you did it up to the BZA and
Okay.
but then they put a little bit of sign.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, okay, gotcha. Yes.
Yeah. Right here, we should tell them that we're stopped the landscape. And when we did the new park, we had two of them.
Yeah, right, that was the plan.
Yeah.
You're gonna resign.
Good. Yeah. Did you see it? No, I'm not. Well, I did see part of it. I think I saw what he all did. It doesn't always make sense to me.
I saw the statement, I didn't have a chance to look at it.
Yes, exactly.
I sort of take a look at it.
Oh, you think that's a good idea? I hear
You know that.
One
You get some inputs from time to time, but
For state. Yes, so are we. Oh, are you really? Yeah. We're on, the end of Idlewild. And come down, we're actually the last house before you take the corner of Somerset. On the left side, exactly, so it's the kind of white brick, the 2-story. Yeah. We bought there like. Oh, you did? Okay. Kidding. Yes, I know that. You back up to the top? Yes, exactly. Okay, gotcha. Yes.
So
we won't have anybody on that. I wouldn't trust animals anymore.
Now it's crazy.
So,
Yeah.
there's nobody else.
Oh, sure. Oh, And that's very nice. You did it nice. You're great. Yeah, we love it. We love this spot. Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Nine left.
Yeah. Seven things that circumstances.
Good evening, welcome to the June 14th meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, take the roll.
Yes. Brad Hemingway. Here. Daniel Buckstuff here. Roman Rathman. Here. Brian Speck is absent with notice. Sharon Mayer.
Here. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the May 10th meeting. Have any corrections or revisions? Seeing or hearing none, a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes. Second.
Now we have a motion second.
You can do roll call vote for you to voice vote.
So, like all in favor?
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Next up is preliminary hearings. First one on the agenda is BZA docket number 22-006. Paul Katz on behalf of Munster Church Incorporated, requesting multiple variances related to the construction of an addition to the church, a Munster Church, and the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building on the same site at 214 Ridge Road. Welcome.
Thank
State
you.
your name and address, please.
My name is Ted Brown with Brown Associates Architects, 13177 Rose Street, Cedar Lake. Good evening. I want to just make a few introductions. My name is Ted Brown with Brown Associates Architects. I'm joined by Don Turinga with Turinga Engineers. He's working with the site civil and site design part of the project. Paul Katz is a longtime member of Munster Church, and he is the building committee chairman, and he's been heading this whole project up since I met him on day one. And then you'll meet Jim Hollander. He's the pastor. He cannot attend tonight. He regrets he couldn't be here, but he wanted to put a little video together, which we'll play in a second, so you can hear his thoughts and his vision and his ideas for why we're doing this project at this time. So what we've done up till now has been a culmination of a 2-year process almost between meeting with the church and their committees and staff and pastor and engineering and architecture. And we're very excited to present this exciting new project, which includes a new addition to a building and a new accessory building. We had a couple months ago, I think, Tom, we had a staff plan review meeting, and that went very well. They had very good suggestions. And I think before I get into the details, I'd like to just let Tom play the video from the pastor. You can hear what he has to say.
Good evening to the Munster, Indiana Planning Commission. My name is Jim Hollander, and I've had the honor of being the pastor of Munster Church for just about 4 years. I stand here on the stage of Munster Church. Now, granted, this wasn't the original building, but this is the sanctuary that has lasted the longest over Munster's 153-year history of being an organized congregation. This congregation has always tried to be a leader in our community while making positive community impact. And the discussion that you guys will have before you tonight, one that we've talked about once already, and I know will continue in the future, is expanding the physical footprint of Munster Church. But more important than the brick and mortar, though that is important, is really the growing impact of change we're looking to make in a positive direction. One of the things that we're going to work with is local ministries, local companies, local opportunities to make impact in the lives of people that call Munster Church home. One of the things I love about the building plans that we have worked diligently with our wonderful architects and the team here at Munster Church is that we want to make a good percentage of the use of the building for the community, helping local businesses with different events, supporting the town of Munster and all of its events, but also allowing for some community space to be used for English as second language, for teen mother ministries, our food pantry to helping those in need in partnership with churches all around Northwest Indiana and Southwest Chicago. But we also know that the rooms and the classrooms and the multi-purpose rooms and the nurseries and the eating areas of this new building, we really want it to be a gift for the community. We want Munster Church to be a safe place for people to meet. We want this church to be a regular place where community can come to feel safe, to feel heard, and to utilize the strengths and giftings of the people of Munster and the people of Munster Church. And we think here at Munster Church, in partnership with the town, with all of you, with other churches and other organizations, to be able to be that place here at 214 Ridge Road. Because as you'll see, being on Ridge Road means that there's always a lot of movement, a lot of people, a lot of things going on. One of the things that I'm excited about this summer is to take part in our Tulip Festival. And one of the things you'll see here in this tulip, it talks a lot about the heritage of this church and of this area. But we also want to be rooted in this church and in this area. That's another reason why as we extend going eastward and hopefully, Lord willing, putting that outbuilding in the back, this will just exemplify the rootedness that Munster Church has had with the town of Munster, with all of those that call this area home. Now, I know that you guys are going to go easy on Ted, and you're going to go easy on Toriga, and you're going to go easy on all those guys, and I pray that it's a wonderful conversation. But know that if you ever have any questions, or you want to check out what God's doing here, by all means, you are more than welcome to come any day of the week, but especially Sundays from 9:30 to 10:30. God bless you, and God bless the rest of your meeting.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Jim. Again, he couldn't be here, but something unique has been happening in Northwest Indiana. Our firm does a wide variety of projects, but we've had a large number of church projects, expansion projects in the last 2 years. And all the pastors, whether it's Suncrest Church in St. John, Village Church in Dyer, Faith Church in Cedar Lake, Crosspoint Church in Crown Point, Bethel Church in Cedar Lake as well. And then I recently got a phone call from Anthem Church in Hammond. They're all having the same conversation when they first talked to me, and that's the churches are just exploding in growth. And a lot of this is coming out of the COVID period. And it's an exciting time. And what they're seeing is a lot of families, middle-aged families with a lot of children who are entering into these churches. So whether you're a churchgoer or not, it seems like they're very positive things for the communities. And they're busting at the seams and they need space for children's ministry. That's what's been driving it. They're not saying, oh, we need this huge sanctuary. We have a lot more adults coming. It's something exciting. So that's when I first met Jim and Paul, I'm like, wow, there's something happening here. So of course we were excited to do the project with them, and that led us to the point where we're at here tonight. So Munster Church, there's two aspects to the project. There's a main addition to the existing church, which will be joined to the main church on the east wall. And that's going to contain mostly children's ministries, classrooms, meeting rooms, nurseries. It's going to have a multi-purpose room for children's worship events. Pastor talked about partnering up with this city, and that there's other needs that room can be used for other uses outside of the church. There's some new offices, a new warming kitchen area, fellowship area, and then the existing church currently has an elevate, a basement with just stair access. Well, that's where the kids meet now. There's no windows down there. There's no elevators, no ADA access. So we've designed the whole addition to be ADA accessible with multiple ramps and elevators. And so it will be a safe environment, as Jim said, for everybody to come. In addition to the main addition, they want to do an accessory building. Now, the site currently has, and I don't know if you can pull up the existing site plan. There's a parsonage, which is, next to the main church building, right in the middle. And then there's three, I think, just scroll back. And there's three accessory buildings. They're like garages, and so the plan is, if you've ever been out there, they're not the best looking. We're going to tear all those down. And that'll create more green space up along Ridge Road, but we're going to replace it with one new accessory building that we're calling, which will contain a cadet workshop for children to learn woodworking. There'll be other children's ministries for weekdays. There's storage and maintenance space that will take place of these other garages that currently sit there. There's a designation on the floor plan for food pantry, and then there's meetings and training rooms. So those are the two main buildings that will replace the old buildings that are there. So that will require some demolition of the existing buildings. We're reworking the site a little bit. We're adding some landscape islands, but we're adding a tremendous amount of landscaping where we're tearing those buildings down on the east side of the parking. The accessory building is set far off of Ridge Road, but yet we've designed a really good front. So even though it's far off, we still wanted it to be matching the architecture of the main building. And then, of course, if you know about Munster Church, there's a cemetery that divides both the east and west parking lots. And Turing engineers have done a good job with redesigning some of the features for the access to Ridge Road. And then, of course, they met some of the requirements for the detention. So the design features of the building, if you want to pull up the rendering, Tom, if you don't mind, for the main building, we've got, we came up with a design that we didn't want it to look like it was something that's in this century that doesn't match with the existing. Those are the black and white images, and then I think you've got the color renderings in there somewhere. There you go. So we've used a lot of the same materials, masonry, stone, brick, and roofing to match the existing building. And we've got a rendering of the rear side too, which has the multi-purpose room. And so we have connectivity between the existing and the new inside and outside on the rear and on the back. So almost all of the people who arrive here to the church don't really come in the front entry. They always come in the back entry, which is on the south end. And so we've created a new grand entry. It's triangular shape, which matches the existing building architecture. And that will serve as the main entry for ADA access, and the elevator is back on that end as well. The landscaping, we're adding lots of new landscaping around the building. We're adding some new landscaping islands. We do need the parking that's there. The amount of parking, we did the calculations, can easily absorb the new spaces that we're adding. And you can see on that drawing, there's lots of new green all the way across the front. If you've seen the landscaping out there now at the corner, Fred Kruzwick did a fabulous job with that. And he'll continue to use that same style around the new building and across Ridge Road. Lighting, we've met the ordinance for lighting the parking lot, the drives. So it's a combination of existing and new lighting. The budget for this project is approximately $4 million total.
$4 million for the addition and then about $1 million for the.
Oh yeah, so we're $5 million they're investing into this. They've raised funds, they're ready to go. This is exciting, they are ready to go. It's not some futuristic thing. We are working on the construction drawings for the accessory buildings. We're days away from finishing that. With your approval, we would like to be able to send that to the state And they would love to get the accessory building going here in late July if we can. The main addition would follow in the fall after that. So with that said, I probably spoke a little too long, but I just want to make sure you had a good feel of what the project is about. I'm available, Don's available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Tom, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Ted did a good job describing the overall project. There is a staff report that's been provided to you, which details the multiple variances that they're requesting. I can go through them if you'd like, but this is a preliminary hearing, so you'll have more opportunity to review those in more detail if you'd like, but let me know if you want me to go through them. There's about 12 of them, so it could take some time.
Any questions from the board?
Madam Chair, I would like Tom to go through the ones that you see could be problematic to, one, to our ordinance and also to the residents.
Any in particular?
No, I mean, the staff report, I mean, usually, I'm used to Tom going through the staff report first and explaining to us all the items that are coming up. And in the future, I would probably like to go back to Tom, probably with the staff report first, so we know exactly what we're going through.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Let me go back to the report here. So we can get on the same page. There we go. So I've broken down the variance requests by category related to our zoning ordinance. And this is going to be kind of text heavy on this description here, but if there's anything you want me to reference in the plan as we're going through it, just let me know. So the first set of variances relate to what we call building and lot standards. So the first is the position of the facade. As you know, we require that a facade be essentially parallel to the frontage line. In this image here, you can see that that blue line is the frontage line. They're proposing that the building be basically continue the same building line as the existing church. So consequently, it's sort of at an angle to that frontage line. Second item is facade design proportions. There are standards that we have which basically say the facade has to be based on a certain proportion, generally whole numbers or the golden mean. And so we do have a note on the plans that say that the building is average facade proportions based on 1 to 4. We would just want to see a little more detail describing that, how that works, before we would say that it meets the standard. So that's why that's included in that as a variance. Thirdly, we require that roof pitches in these districts be 8 to 12, between 812 and 1412 pitch, or flat. And what they're proposing is a portion of the building, which is shown here, which does meet that standard. But the sort of back of the building here, this is the addition, which covers their multi-purpose room, is 512 pitch. So that doesn't meet that standard. The remainder of the building is actually a flat roof. Fourthly, Ted talked a little bit about how the main entrance of the building is on the south side. We've required in our zoning that the main entrance be on the front of the building. The idea is that you don't have the building really turning its back to the street, but really embracing the street. So they're proposing that they kind of close off the pedestrian access from Ridge Road and have primary access to the south. Last item under building and lot standards has to do with the screening of the parking lot. We do require that anywhere there's a civic zone or a commercial zone, that it be parking lot that be screened from adjacent properties. In this case, it would be the residential properties to the south, behind the parking lot. This is actually the lighting plan, but you can see that this is the south parking lot or the east parking lot here. There are some fences kind of intermittently on the residential properties here. And there is some sort of, landscape, I don't know if I call it landscaping, but it's sort of a bit of a screen with some trees and some kind of overgrown plants and those types of things. So I would say it's partially screened, but we would require either a fence or a wall or a hedge, 6 foot tall. With the lighting plan that was provided, photometric plan, there are a few dark spots in the parking lot. We require a minimum of 0.4 foot candles. This portion of the lot shown here does not meet that minimum standard. So they're requesting variance from that. Secondly, under lighting, the light fixtures, we require either Acorn, Coach, or Colonial types of fixtures. And they're proposing this just kind of a standard parking lot fixture. Moving on to landscaping, there are a number of landscaping variances that they're requesting. Some of this has to do with the fact that they're working with an existing parking lot. So when there's a new building being constructed, we do require that all landscaping requirements be implemented. So that's kind of what's triggering this, even though there are portions of the parking lot that they're not actually touching. Those technically would be required to be brought up to compliance. So the first landscaping provision has to do with the installation of what we call landscape islands, which are basically these landscaped areas within parking lots. We require 1 for every 10 parking spaces. They're adding 3 here, which are outlined, and we would basically suggest that an additional 18 spaces be converted per the ordinance. And again, that's not existing parking spaces. That's just sort of areas at the end of the parking rows. This second item deals with the same provision. This has sort of the geographic distribution of those. And thirdly, we do require 1 tree for every 2,000 square feet of parking area. We don't know if they've met this or not. They haven't provided a calculation of the existing parking area on the plan sheet, so we can't tell, but we estimate that an additional 20 trees would be required. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's 20 trees existing. So fourthly, it's a similar tree requirement that no parking space be more than 72 feet from a tree. Again, typically when you meet those other standards, they kind of all go hand in hand, right? So they're all met. So this is another instance where it's not being met. And then finally, with respect to the planting strip at Ridge Road, when there's a new building being built, the streetscape standards have to be met, and those require 1 tree every 30 feet. So again, depending on the spacing where one begins and whether or not there are any sort of driveways and that sort of thing, that would prohibit the planting of trees. We count that approximately 14 shade trees would be required and 6 are being provided.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions? Motion?
Madam Chairperson, I'll make a motion to set BZA docket 22-006 for public hearing, and that petitioner comply with all town's notice requirements.
I'll second.
Motion second.
There's no discussion. Brad, I mean, Oh, you can do it.
We can do it?
Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is BZA docket number 22-008, Larry Gill on behalf of Temple BZA requesting approval of variances to allow a 6-foot vinyl fence at frontage and a first lot layer in a civic zone at 10,001 Columbia Avenue.
My wife can introduce this one.
Yes, please, Tom.
Okay, so this is a much simpler proposal, but as you said, Larry Gill on behalf of the Temple Bethel, which is located at 10001 Columbia Avenue here in Munster, is requesting a set of variances in order to install a fence, a 6-foot vinyl fence along the Columbia Avenue frontage. So this is the property in question. This is Columbia Avenue. This is Palmer Singleton Drive. And this is down Powers Drive here down the middle here. So they, as I said, they're requesting that they approached the town asking for permission to, or ask for a permit to install a 6-foot fence, solid fence, vinyl, as you can see here. This is the sample that they provided to us. Essentially along that, as I said, that Columbia Avenue frontage. This is Palmer Singleton Drive. This is Columbia here. Our code doesn't permit a 6-foot fence to be installed at a frontage. So this is Columbia Avenue frontage. It also doesn't permit a vinyl fence in civic zone, which is what this is, because it's a religious use. So consequently, they're asking for variances from those two standards in order to install the fence as proposed. They provided a spec sheet in the staff report that talks about the fencing, describes the fencing. I'll also note that in the staff report is a letter of support which we received from Chief Shekel of the Munster Police Department. It kind of speaks for itself, but basically what the Munster PD has done is they've conducted some security audits of I guess synagogues. I don't know if they've done it the same for churches, but given the recent sort of rash of violence, shootings at churches and synagogues, they did this audit and they recommended specifically to Temple Bethel that they install a solid fence to kind of provide additional security from Columbia Avenue in case there's somebody interested in, doing some kind of drive-by shooting, and just to give sort of an additional privacy to not attract somebody who would be wishing to do something violent towards the congregation. So that's essentially it. There's not, I said, it's not as complicated as the other one.
Thank you, John.
Can I add that the fence there, it's a security fence, it's a steel beam going through the bottom and the top of it. That is hidden. So it looks normal, but there is security to that fence.
You are Larry Gill?
Yes, I am. I'm Larry Gill. Yes.
And, are you a resident of Munster?
Yes, I am.
Can you state your name and address?
Sure. Larry Gill, 1310 Vivian Lane, Munster, Indiana.
Thank you. Did you have anything more that you'd like to add?
Not really. I mean, between the write-up and everything else that we've done, it all pretty much says it. It's, that security fence, the 6 foot high, would make our congregants feel much safer with this, and especially with the increased traffic that we're looking at for the railway station coming up in the near future. I think that the fence would go a long way in protecting our congregants.
And so the,
And if you'd like here, I brought a sample of the actual fence that they would use without the steel beams, of course.
so So the fence, you can see this, is just going,
Yes,
So-
the fence goes about 8 feet out from the northwest corner of our building. Then it turns south paralleling Columbia, and then turns east to the southeast corner of the building. I'm sorry, southwest corner.
okay, and is it going into your parking lot?
No.
No.
Since we have streets on 3 sides of us, there's no impact to the neighbors. The neighbor to the south, I don't see any impact to them at all.
Do you have a planned use for that space that you're gonna create once you enclose it?
Well, we already have a patio that sometimes holds services outdoors. Sometimes let the kids run around a little bit, right with the fence, of course, I think much safer, so that they could play. You know, we haven't got that far as to future uses, but maybe depending upon our religious school enrollment, we could add a few more amenities for the kids.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to set this for public hearing.
Second.
Very good. In that, no discussion? All in favor? We'll see you next month.
Okay, thank you.
Know what's the time to send out notifications? Okay, BZA docket number 22-009, Janine Graham on behalf of JEM Med Spa requesting a variance from the Centennial Village Planning and Development Design Standards, section 11.7, to permit a second principal sign at the 9610 North Centennial Drive.
Okay, thanks. So this is an application for 2 tenant spaces at 9610 North Centennial Drive, which is located in the southeast corner of Building G of the Centennial Village development. So that's the mixed-use building that was just recently completed. And the applicant represents Gentleman Med Spa, which has leased both of those spaces, and is seeking to install 2 signs in order to basically provide signage over both of the storefronts that they've leased. The design of the building is such that it's been divided up into these storefronts, but within the building, it's an open, single tenant space. Within the Centennial Village Planning and Development Design Standards, it specifically states, as it's shown there in section 11.7, each business within the multi-tenant building will be permitted 1 principal sign, and such signs may be wall-mounted, and so on and so forth. So, as I said, what they're proposing to do is install 2 principal signs. And if you haven't been out to see what this looks like in person, I'll just describe it to you, but there's basically a space for a sign here and space for a sign here, and then in the center pillar dividing the 2 storefronts, it's stands out from the building, so it's kind of like an ornamental pillar. So it's not a continuously flat space across that storefront, and there's also, as you can see, the supports for those metal awnings. So in order to have a sign that extends across both of their tenant spaces, it needs to be divided into 2. And so the request is to get a variance from that provision, which permits only 1 sign.
Thank you.
I'll just mention, one thing, which is there's also a square footage requirement. And so with the additional signs, as well as a 3rd sign that they're proposing on the east side of the building, They have not, they're not asking for any variance from the overall square footage. They're still below their total area allotment. So it's really, it's just a variance from the two-side standard. One side standard. I should say. And I think we have representatives from Gen Med spot here to.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please state your name and address.
Yeah, Gus Galante, and I live at 1510 Somerset Drive in Munster. So yeah, we were requesting a variance, as Tom mentioned, for 2 signs were only allowed. I just want to start out by saying I've been a resident of Munster since 1967. Proud to be a Munster graduate of Munster High School. I swam for Munster, and so bottom line is I'm very proud of the town, and I always appreciate the town making it, trying to make it more beautiful. And one of the things was, as you mentioned about the tulips, the pastor, my wife and I put up a tulip and supported the Munster Civic Foundation. And we have a tulip on top of the mountain. I don't know if you can see it, but go up the steps, there's a mountain there by the golf course. My business, I'm a plastic surgeon, plastic and reconstructive surgeon, and as you may know, what's the word plastic come from? Plasticos comes from the Greek word plastikos, which means to mold or to give form. So we are the specialty of form and function. And in doing so, obviously, we take care of injuries, we take care of cancer reconstruction, we take care of birth defects. But another part of our specialty is obviously cosmetic surgery, and that's where this comes into play, is the non-surgical part of cosmetic surgery, which includes Botox, fillers, chemical peels, laser hair removal, et cetera, et cetera. The things that you can do in the office out of an operating room. So Gen Med Spa, with my partners, Gene Graham and also Melissa Judah, who's not here, we're partnering to put up a very beautiful high-end med spa in Munster. And one of the issues is, it's in Centennial Village with the restrictions on the signs. And as Tom mentioned, we have 2 suites. And so if someone else were to move in there as another business, they would have the sign there too. So it seems to me that we have the extra space. We should hopefully be able to have an extra sign. Second of all, we're paying taxes. That's important. I think that brings revenue, and it's going to beautify the area as well. This is Centennial Village. And again, I take great pride in the town, and I take great pride in my business and what we're going to be doing for the town. And so the issue is, as he mentioned, one of the issues is we're at an angle, and it would be nice if we could put one sign. I don't think you have the photos, but Katie Rose, which is right next to us, has a long, big sign because they have the real estate to be able to put that on the brick, and we don't have that advantage. As he mentioned, there are those cables right in the middle. That's a right angle, as you can see. I'll just point it out. This basically comes out like this. And so in doing so, we can't put a long sign there. It has to be broken up into 2. And if we put one sign with everything on there, the letter is going to be so small that you're not going to see it. And particularly at night, you can see one's green, one's black. And sorry. Yeah, I mean, ours would be both green, but the way it is, the sign lights up behind the green background. So at night, not now, but certainly at night, we're going to be doing business in the early evening hours, and that's going to light up. The JEM, the med spa is going to light up behind that green background. And to do it all without that, we have to put a lot of holes in the brick to hold up some of those letters without the green background. That green background is lighting up the sign. So again, this is one of the issues, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But this is something that we want to beautify the town. It's got to do with taste. We're in the aesthetic business, and I think that has to do with not only people but also brick and mortar, right? So.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Miller.
Yeah.
Any questions from the board?
I'm excited to see another new business going in Centennial Village. I'll make the motion approved. Set the public hearing.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. You work with
Thank
Tom.
you, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Going to public hearings, we have BZA docket number 22-004. Louis Carbonier on behalf of Maryland A Education Trust, requesting approval of a variance to allow a four-car garage for a residence less than 5,000 square feet at 8120 Castle Drive.
Okay, this was a preliminary hearing last month, comes tonight as public hearing. The applicant is proposing or I should say proposing to construct a house at the corner of River Drive and Castle Drive in the recently approved Fairway addition. Subject property is a single lot that was consolidated from two lots late last year. They are proposing a 4,200 square foot single family home and with a four-car garage. They're also proposing a 57.34 foot wide driveway off of River Drive. So that's a variance that wasn't identified at the preliminary hearing, but has since been identified and has been advertised as part of the public notice. They have a second driveway off of Castle Drive, which is 12 feet wide, which also would require a variance. In summary, our zoning ordinance limits the number of garage spaces that can be installed on a single family house. And if a house is less than 5,000 square feet, it's only permitted a 3-car garage. So the variance that they're requesting is to install a 4-car garage on a 4,200 square foot house. Secondly, they're asking for variances from the maximum driveway width. We have basically a rule of 10 feet for a single garage space. And so they're asking for 57 feet on the north side and then 12 feet on the east side for the driveways. I will pull up see here from the building plan. This is the location of the attached 4-car garage on the sort of northwest side of the building. This is the location of the wide driveway, and then this is the 12-foot wide driveway that is providing access to a kind of like a carport on the front of the building. So like I said, there are 3 variances being requested. And here's a rendering of the house, kind of showing where how those garage spaces work, as well as the front carport. I will just, I'll note in my report, I recommended that the variance be denied. And the reason I've done that is because we have seen requests for 4-car garages in the past. Those have been denied by this board, and typically those have been in situations where there's an existing house that they're hoping to kind of retrofit to get additional spaces. In this instance, it's a new house, and there's criteria that requires that the situation be unique. My reading is that it's not a unique situation which would require a variance from our standard.
Thank you. Please state your name again.
Lou Carbonari, 207 Salisbury Drive in Worcester.
Did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to know how you considered the 5,000 the cutoff, because the total square footage of finished space on that house is well over 5,000. So it's a ranch application with 4,200 square feet of finished space on the first floor, and then about 1,200 square feet of finished space in the basement, which today, as real estate is, the square footage which is considered for the sale of a home today, is considered the square footage, the finished square footage of the home. So with a ranch application like that, I was just wondering where the 5,000 square feet, if it's 5,000 finished square feet, there's plenty of square footage to finish from that house.
So the ordinance specifically does not include basements.
So it's behind the real estate. So the real estate today considers finished space total. Also too, what I like to mention is that with the new construction of this home and the size of this home, I don't know where that it's going to be somewhat of a problem for the subdivision or ICE, or the whole thought process is to get vehicles off the street today because of the issue with crime and vandalism and carjacking and whatever else. So I think the whole thought process is that it fits the home perfectly. It doesn't cause any damage or destruction to the subdivision. It's actually a beautiful home that's going to be sitting, that faces the river. The 4-car garage faces the river. So it really is not impeding anyone at this particular time. And we're able to get the cars inside the garage to potentially deter theft or vandalism, which is happening a lot. And that size, because there's direct access to Hammond on that side. So there's a lot of people that come through that.
So let me give you a little bit of history. I've been on this board for over 20 years. And back in, probably close to maybe 18 or 19 years ago, we consistently were getting requests for variances for homes that were mainly being built in White Oak Estates, and they were over 5,000 square feet. Most all of them were over 5,000 square feet. And at that time, the ordinance read that 3-car garages were max. So after several years of multitudes of those variance requests, it was decided to revise the ordinance to read that if a home had finished space above 5,000 square feet, they were allowed 4-car garage. And then since that time, we've seen few, but as Tom stated, the ones that we have seen have mostly been in retrofits, not new construction. You have the ability to design a home that meets the variance, or I'm sorry, meets the requirements where variance wouldn't be needed, but you're choosing not to. Correct?
Well, I just think the home is now on 2 lots. So if you were to put the standard together, you would build one house with 1 3-car garage and another house with another 3-car garage, and potentially have a 6th garage space on the same land, as we are now having one house on 2 lots with a 4-car garage. So it's not, I understand the stipulation because there's still a number of 4-car garages that are under 5,000 square feet in Munster. That were built new construction, that weren't retrofitted after. There's I think Katona owns the home that's in White Oak Estates right off of Main Street that has a 4-car garage, and that house is well under 5,000 square feet. And that was a new construction building. So I think with this house replacing 2 lots, we're actually reducing the number of garage spaces on that property by having 4-car garages versus 6-car garages. If you were to drive down any street in Munster, most of the cars, because of the size of the garage, they're all over the street. So I think that entices, snatch and grab, bust the window and take stuff out of your car, a number of things to try to get the cars off the street. And I understand the variance, 5,000 square feet finished space. If you were to consider the finished space on this home, it is over 5,000 square feet of finished space with the basement.
So before we open the meeting to the public hearing, all I'll say to you is just what you just said about referring to another homeowner in town is every time that we allow a variance or approve a variance, someone down the road will come back and say, well, what about that one? Well, what about that one? So every time we do that, it comes back to haunt us later. So that's why we have to be very careful.
And I
What we
get that.
do.
I didn't come in on the premise to say, here's all the examples, here's the pictures of all the 4-car garages. I would have. That's not my intent. My intent is that this is a home on 2 lots on the river which the homeowner is a car collector, and they just don't want to leave their cars onto the driveway or onto the street. And to modify this home and make it another, I mean, above grade, it's well over 5,000 square feet already, a finished space already. So then we'd be looking at adding another 800 square feet of living space on the first floor, making a 5,000 square foot ranch. I mean, that's a lot to build onto this home to be able to just acquire. We're only looking for 14 additional feet of garage space. And I'm building 500 square feet or 800 square feet of additional home just to accommodate a garage. I mean, I'm sure that's the route we're gonna go. But I mean, it's just gonna take up the entire property. It's gonna take up, so you can't add any more width to this house.
Well, and speaking of that, I think at the last meeting, I had asked Tom to check on the calculations for the lot coverage.
Yeah, we did look into that, and it's well below the 30% maximum.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can't make the house any wider. So what you have to do is push the house to the backyard, which the size of the house already, you can see the footprint of the home leaves hardly any space for green space. So eventually what the thought is that if it wasn't passed today, we were just going to expand the house because we're well under the size of the home. We're just going to expand the house, I guess, another 800 square feet, which is going to take up all the green space by the river, which, you know, the more grass that you have by the river is going to be better just because of the whole idea of the river and the saturation on that end, because this house is actually at the furthest northwest corner. So then you're going to just be a complete home and garage house because you're going to have a 5,000 square foot home with another 2,000 square foot garage with another. So you're going to have 9,000 square feet of roof coverage.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Okay. So if anyone would like to step forward, if you have any comments to make, this would be the time. And we have no one on the line.
This person's raised, yeah, I'm sorry, this person's raised their hand. But
Oh, I'm sorry. No, that's okay. I'm not going to say your name and address.
Linda Watterson, 8122 Oakwood Avenue. The only thing I really have to say is you allowed the variance one time. That means you need to do it all the time. That's how I think it should be run. You allow the variance for a 4-car garage, less than 5,000 square feet. You allow it once, it needs to be allowed forever. And that's my comment.
Thank you.
there's somebody on Zoom with their hand raised, named Michael's iPhone.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead.
Michael Geffert, 10380 Oxford Place. Looking at the plans, I saw them last month, and looking at this month, I just like to say it looks like a beautiful house. As a car enthusiast, I'm super jealous of the design. I hope that he is able to get it approved. I mean, I have 4 cars. I'd love to be able to fit them all inside. Unfortunately, I've got something parked out in the driveway all the time. It's kind of annoying. So kind of jealous. Hope he gets it approved. Not sure why why the restriction. I understand that we don't want people having an at-home business out of the garage, but having 4 cars these days is not out of the norm. Teenagers and whatnot, which I'll have soon enough, so I love the design, love what they've done, and I hope they get it approved. My only other comment would be as maybe a happy median. It was mentioned that this is the design of the house. Maybe it could be done with 3 doors, where one of the stalls is 2 cars deep. That way, they still get 4 cars that they can fit into the garage. But there isn't the 4-door look from the outside, and aesthetically that could be made to look like it is only a 3-car garage. Don't know if that's something that can be considered, but thought it maybe would be a happy medium. If that's not possible, again, I love the idea of a 4-car, 4-door garage. And if the builder gets this one approved and finds another spot to build a house not so big, give me a call.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Seeing as hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, return it to the board.
Madam President,
Yes.
so I'm inclined to support the first variance, but for the second and third variances for the coverage of the driveway, the petitioner stated that, the porch green space, but yet you're wanting to put pave for driveway, taking away green space. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I would be fine with narrowing the driveway. I just thought with a straight drive, it makes it a lot easier to be able to pull straight into the garage, but I would go back to the standard width of the street cut. I think originally that was a misstep when it was drawn originally, and they just went the driveway. I think it would have been nice to kind of draw both of those in to get the narrower curve, so I'm fine with that. And I just believe the curve with a 10-foot wide is a little narrow when you're coming into a curve. If it was a straight drive, 10 I think would be fine. But since you're taking a curve, I thought to extend it a little bit wider so that when you're turning, you're not running over the grass, and that would be just a hook driveway. But I would be inclined to narrow down the driveway on the river side to the standard that the town would require.
No, I'm saying with this curved driveway also, with the snow in the winter time, you got to turn with a plow truck.
Yeah,
It's
and
a tougher radius if it's not wide
Yeah,
enough.
10 feet is pretty narrow no matter how you do it. So. But again, if that were the holdup on the 4-car garage, I would have no problem going back to the 10-foot wide width and going to the town standard on the driveway coming in the 4-car garage here.
Madam President,
Yes.
this is a big house on 2 lots. I mean, and I don't understand why we don't include a finished basement as our square footage. I'm sure Lake County's taxing you on that basement. if it's
Oh,
finished,
absolutely.
So I'm not sure why we don't include finished space as finished space.
Tom, do we have any take on that? I don't remember how that was arrived at on that later.
I don't. I can just tell you that it specifically says excluding basements. The ordinance specifically says
Finished space.
3-car garage max, excluding basements.
So the intent was that basements were probably unfinished. Yes.
Probably so, right. But when you're putting bathrooms down there, and I'm not sure I put downstairs, probably put
So
kitchen.
yeah, I was trying to look at the drawing, but my eyes aren't as heavy.
Yeah,
as they used to be.
it is tiny. I did not.
So would you mind approaching?
Sure, do you have the set of plans?
Building plans?
Yes.
The bathroom downstairs, cool bathroom.
Yeah, there's a full bathroom.
Yeah, I'm trying to read it, but it's very small.
What is it? I won't. Okay, so let's see here. Yeah, so
Wait,
this,
wait. Can you make that a little bigger?
so this is the 4-car garage. This is the staircase going down into the basement. This complete area that's etched here is all finished space, which has a bathroom, a small little kitchen. This is open area also too, with 2 staircases, one going up from the kitchen and one coming down. And then this is all unexcavated. This is all crawl space area. But this whole section over here is all finished basement with a bathroom and a shower and a little kitchenette.
You're roughed in for a future bathroom down there.
Yes, on this side also too, yes. And then this side over here is unexcavated. So this is crawl space, and then this is full deep basement with a roughed-in bathroom here for a future bedroom and family room area. But this actual space is included with when we apply for the permit for finished space.
But in theory, you could add 6,000 square feet later on.
Yes, so this is roughly about 3,000 square feet here, so you could potentially be at 7,000 square feet.
But there aren't any windows for the lower level
No,
though.
there's windows. There's a window right here.
I'm looking at your elevations. I'm not seeing any windows.
Yeah, and they were probably not drawn, but there's window wells here. There's also a window well right here. You can see that in the print.
Yeah, you have it right there. Set cover flush with top of slab.
Yeah, no, that's a tough one without seeing the full.
So
There
what's
are-
the square footage of that finished area down there?
Just a little under 1,200 square feet.
So I'm gonna say this just for the audience sake, a comment as to one of the people who spoke, that the reason why we're here every month is because we have a set of ordinances, and when instances like this occur and residents, want to vary from our code, they have to come to this board to do so. So just because we pass something one time doesn't mean that it's grandfathered in permanently. That's why we meet every month. So just to let you know, I understand your thoughts, but that's the reason. Do I have a motion?
Madam President, I'm going to make a motion to approve variance number 1 and number 3 and deny variance number 2.
Any comments?
Mr. Carbonari, on number 2, you said you stated you can make that driveway work by not having.
Yes, I'll narrow that driveway down. So if the standard is 10 feet for every garage space, we could definitely narrow that down to 40 feet or closer to the 37 feet. I think it was originally.
Then you can always make a kick out the turnout or
Yes, check
something.
it out. Yes, maybe just.
Fan it out or something.
Yes.
Okay. So that design will work with the property and the four doors.
Yes.
I'll support that. I'll make a second.
So your second is contingent upon the driveway being narrowed.
That's gonna have to work with town and code, right?
Yeah, and that'll be redrawn on the print, and I can submit that also to you.
And that's the same motion, correct?
All right. Tom, let's take a roll on this one.
Okay, Brett Hemingway,
Yes.
Dan Buckner,
Yes.
Roland Rathman,
Yes.
Sharon Mayer,
Yes. Motion passes. Excuse me.
Finds it back.
Oh, last item on our agenda, findings of fact, BZA 22-003, Paris Muse Layout of 821 Main Street LLC, requesting approval of a variance to allow a reduction in the required parking spaces for a restaurant at 821 Main Street. Any corrections?
I'll make the motion approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other items for discussion?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Oh, I'm sorry, wait, before we adjourn, one comment. So on my way here, I drove past Michael Duff's house, and I don't know if it had been passed. So I'm not quite sure what is going on with that garage door,
he is closing it off.
but I mean, that's not good construction practice, what he's doing there.
Does look a little unusual, I agree.
It looks temporary to me. They left the trim up where the door.
That's new trim. So he
Right.
just resided the entire thing. He trimmed out the opening for the garage door. And the door itself is completely closed off. It will be second.
And the trim will remain around the door,
That's my
which makes me think that it's temporary. And the coach lights are still on.
Yeah,
I mean, this
it
cannot,
will be,
this
it will
cannot,
be inspected to make sure that it's, a permanent closure, but yeah, I mean, aesthetically, it's not what I would have chosen, but
it can't meet the code now. Where the door meets where the door met the ground, there's no foundation wall there separated.
well, it'll be inspected when it's an ongoing building. It's an open building permit, so inspections will be done. And there will be a final inspection, and if it doesn't pass the final inspection, then it will be corrected.
Very good. Okay, sorry, Roland.
That's okay, I make a motion with it.
Second.
All in favor? One note, because I will be on vacation for the next meeting on July 12th.
Enjoy.
Thank you, I'm looking forward. Where's the vice chair? Oh, you're vice chair.
So meeting is adjourned.
So, but I will be here for the special meeting on the very end.
Okay, good.
Good job, Sharon.
Thank you.
All right, for all those who are in the audience here, we will start the plan commission in a few minutes. I see the numbers are there in the back. Short break. And then we'll reconvene in a couple minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're back from the- Thanks, Matt.
We don't get
Again.
Yeah, we don't want to be here till 10 o'clock, right?
Exactly. My first is turning to this. July 12th.
I'll see you.
Good, Joe. Good. Glad you came. No, not at all. You come anytime, man. Exactly. I didn't recognize the number, but that was fine. I thought it was a number that was on there. It's like, oh, oh, well, I think it's already done. Yeah, not a problem. Good. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good idea. Everybody else is picked up.
What do you think, Tom?
Hi, Tom.
It is 7:55, and I will call the planning commission meeting to order for Tuesday, June 14th. Would everyone please rise for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tom, would you please call roll?
Yes, Councilor Nolan,
Present.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Present.
Councilor Tulowitzki is absent. With notice, Rachel Brannigan.
Present.
Bill Baker.
Here.
Brian Speck is absent. Roland Rappen.
Here. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? If so, it's the pleasure of the commission.
I have chairman, I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Tom, just want to do a voice?
We can do that now?
Yep, no one's online. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We have no preliminary hearings, so we're going to move on to public hearings. The first item on the agenda for public hearing is PC docket number 22007, Paul Katz on behalf of Munster Church, requesting a developmental plan to construct an addition to the Munster Church, the construction of a new multi-purpose accessory building and associated site modifications, 214 Ridge Road. Before you get started, I'm gonna let staff do his report so we don't have redundancy of.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, all right. Tom, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. As you said, this is a request for approval of a development plan for the Munster Church Incorporated, located at 214 Ridge Road. They're proposing two major modifications to their site in addition to the main building and the demolition of three existing structures on site and the construction of a new accessory building, along with, let's see if I can get a good picture here for you, but along with those modifications, they're also doing some reconfiguration of the parking lot. And
On a roller coaster ride.
it's not going the right direction. Okay, bear with me a second here, as I find my plan so slow. Okay. This is the one that I want to show you, which is the site plan. So as I said, they'll be demolishing a number of buildings which are located here on the east side of the site. Proposing a building addition here to the east of the main church building, as well as this accessory structure here on the southeast corner. In addition, there'll be modifying the landscaping towards the front, modifying the site lighting, putting in some additional landscaping in the parking lot, and constructing a detention pond in the southeast corner. In the staff report, I've kind of gone through the development standards. I'll note that we can go through them all if you'd like, but basically I've provided a table here which outlines the development standards in a civic zone. They're a little more flexible actually than commercial zone, so there's not as many standards, but generally speaking, they've met most of them. For those of you who were present at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, they're also requesting 12 variances from a number of the other standards. So those are all shown here in this table. So I don't think I'll go through each one unless you really want me to, but I'll just kind of summarize the overall sites. They're meeting all the standards for parking. They're meeting the standards for building materials. And the major, I guess, deviation from our standards has to do with the location of the building on the lot. They're not parallel to the frontage. And then there are a number of landscaping requirements that they're not meeting. This has a lot to do with the fact that they're trying to retrofit an existing parking lot. But they're also seeking some relief from the lighting standards, and but they provided a full photometric plan that's included in the staff report. This is a rendering of the building here. You can see that it generally matches the existing architecture. As I said, there are a handful of standards. I'm struggling to describe this project because there are a handful of standards that they meet, but there are also a number that they don't meet. And I don't want to go through all the various requests, but I can tell you that they have an active petition before the Board of Zoning Appeals seeking relief from a number of the standards, and that was heard at a preliminary hearing tonight. It will be scheduled for a public hearing in July. And so consequently, the recommendation from the staff would be to hold the public hearing tonight, but make any approval contingent upon ultimately the receipt of those variances. So having said that, I'll answer any questions.
Tom, has the new building met all the parameters with hiding mechanicals and trash enclosures and all that different stuff, sprinkler irrigation?
So with respect to the mechanicals, there's no mechanicals shown as being visible from the street. The majority of the building is the building addition is a flat roof. So they're not showing any mechanicals on the ground. If they're on the roof, they're being shown as being screened. There's no dumpster enclosure shown on the plans. I don't know.
Are they
if that's-
increasing trash with more people and?
More space, I would say yes.
That's a good question. I think that's something to ask the petitioner.
Any other questions for staff before we open up the petitioner?
I have a question about I noticed that the front steps for the church were going to go away and be replaced with some sort of terrace. Does that stray from our streetscape standards? That seems to me something, I realize they probably don't enter the church that way typically, but it seems kind of important to have steps from Ridge Road, just of a kind of prominence.
Yeah, so what you're referring to is, and again, we go back to the report. I apologize, it's a little- So I think what you're referring to is this. Currently, there's the front door shown on Ridge Road, and they're proposing to eliminate those stairs and turn that sort of entryway area into patio. Our standard in the code, and you can see it's one of the variances listed, requires that the front door be on the street side. In this instance, they're removing any access from Ridge Road, and they're sort of putting an entryway on the south side of the building facing the parking lot. So with respect to our streetscaping standards, it's not impacted, but it is a zoning standard that's a requirement.
So is this meeting it, or is that a variance to that?
That's a variance being requested.
So is the new building that's being attached to this being adhered to as a part of the new ordinance, or is that a variance as well, since it's such a far setback? So is it gonna stay in line with the existing structure? And that's the variance. So we've been talking about this for months and months and months, and now the church is here asking for the same thing, and now we're down the same path.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, and maybe I might be missing something, but it feels like this side of the street, at least where they are, because they're on the ridge, so, I mean, that changes, it seems like it changes a lot of, it doesn't change our code, but it would be really hard to meet the code as it is, I mean, on the ridge, where the existing building is already.
I agree, Councilwoman. Is there a standard as it relates to anything as far as elevation changes on the street and the streetscaping and all the things that we've been sitting in meetings on for the last 2 years?
As far as, is there an exception?
No, what's the standard as it relates to is if there's a elevation change from the sidewalk and having a requirement of putting a building up against the sidewalk, and if there's an elevation change similar to what we saw with Costanza's property over the last however many months, is there a standard that is a part of the code and what that's supposed to look like? So people coming to invest in the community have at least some idea of what that would entail.
No, there's no standard. I'll just note that in this civic district, they're not required to be as close to the street. There's no maximum setback like there is in a commercial district.
Because it's civic.
Correct.
And then I'm not sure what part of the code we put where it's located, but we don't want to change the topography of Ridge Road. So no one could come along and cut that down, even let's say with something totally different. That's not allowed in our code right now without seeing a variance, because we don't want to destroy the ridge that's left. It's in there. I'm not sure exactly where it is.
That's right. That's it's kind of like an overlay zone. It's called a special consideration in this area called the ridge preservation.
So that goes all the way down like the Casa and the Jewel, all the way down that way.
Yes.
So there's a certain guideline just for that south side of Ridge Road.
Correct.
Thank you.
Tom, so these stairs are going to be removed.
That's correct. Let me show you.
What is it going to look like after the stairs are removed? 'Cause I don't see an image in regards to the landscape and the way it's going to look.
Yeah, so the best place to look for that would be the landscape.
It's going to have that same pitch. Is there going to be sod there, or what's?
What they're proposing to do is landscape the front of the addition, similar to what's been landscaped.
What page?
It's on the landscape plan.
Yep, I'm trying to get there.
There you go.
This,
What page is that?
this is page 25.
I can see that.
But you can see this is the existing front door of the church. They're proposing to remove that staircase, which is right here, and replace it with essentially consistent landscaping, the landscaping that's consistent with the corner of Home and Ridge Road. It's kind of that terraced stone.
So there'd be 2 levels. We're going to level it up.
Like a routine, right?
Right, like there's under a
Any other questions for staff?
One other question I had, you said that they wanted a variance with the lighting for the parking lot. What's the variance there? They're not putting enough lights in, or they're taking lights out, or what's going on with that?
So there's 2 variances being requested from the lighting standards. The first is from the minimum. The first is from the minimum illumination standard. So we have a standard that says you can be no lower than 0.4 foot candles in any part of the parking lot or sidewalk area. And so this southeast corner of the parking lot is below that standard. So that's the first variance that they're requesting for lighting. The second is for the type of lighting being proposed, the type of fixture. Now I'm going to have to zoom in to show you this, but essentially we require what you might consider to be an ornamental type of a fixture, which it would be an acorn style head or a coach style head. And they're proposing a standard parking lot light.
Why is that? I guess I can ask them when we get up here.
Yeah.
And why, going back to their first variance you asked, so they want to actually put in less lighting in their parking lot area?
So they're increasing the overall lighting, but it falls short of our minimum standard.
Okay, but my question, so I'll ask them that question. Okay. Thank you, Tom.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Tom, with regards to the corner of Holman and Ridge Road, so that's a high profile corner in town. What does staff work with the petitioner with regards to that corner and what's the outcome of that?
So that corner will not be changed in any way.
At all?
Correct.
Did staff bring that up or was that just something that didn't hit the radar?
We did not bring that up. They recently did a pretty substantial upgrade to the landscaping. Yeah, so their proposal is to upgrade the remainder of the frontage to match that.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was anything within the streetscaping and all of that stuff that corner might be able to fit in with some town participation to enhance that corner. Notice I said town participation.
You know, we don't have any programs to enhance the landscaping in that area.
That's streetscape. Thank you.
Any other questions? Turn over to you, gentlemen. Say your name and address for record, please.
Good evening, my name is Ted Roan with Roan Associates Architects, 13177 Road Street, Cedar Lake, Indiana, 46303. Roland, I'm sorry you have to listen to the same speech again, but I think it's important that they at least hear the main points of why we're here tonight. I'm joined by Don Turinga with Turinga Engineers. He's been working on site design, site engineering. I'm also joined by Paul Katz. He's with Munster Church, longtime member, chairman of the building committee. I've worked with him for 2 years, and it's been exciting to take this path on with him. And then Pastor Jim Hollander, he could not attend tonight. He really wanted to. He's prepared a short little video so he can share his vision and his ideas for what the church wants to accomplish. And so this has been a culmination of a 2-year type process with working with the church and coming up with designs. We met with staff, site plan review committee a few months ago. We took their recommendations. There are several items as mentioned in the BZA that we're asking for. Most of it relates to the existing parking lot. The west parking lot, we're doing nothing to. There's no addition, there's no work there. The east parking lot, we believe we're actually enhancing and removing paving and adding more landscaping. So we could get into questions later on that. I did say at the BZA meeting too that I just want to point it out that church growth in Northwest Indiana is just going like gangbusters. It's really a phenomenon that's exciting since COVID. I've been involved in church ministry additions and remodelings for Suncrest Church, Village Church, Faith Church, Crosspoint Church, Bethel Church, and Anthem Church. And Hammond has just contacted me. And the common theme with all these churches is they're busting at the seams in their children's ministry. They don't have enough space. Lots of new families, middle-aged families with children are coming back to church. Very exciting. They have the same thing. Kids meet in the basement right now. There's not enough space. There's not enough daylight. There's not good ADA access to the basement. They came to me. We designed a 13,000, almost 14,000 square foot addition that is comprised of children's ministry classes, youth rooms, multi-purpose room, nurseries, some new offices, and then we're redoing this fellowship area. We're creating an elevator to the existing basement. That's all on the floor plans. And it's all ADA accessible from the outside too, with ramps and walkways. So that's what the main addition is comprised of. The secondary building, we're calling an accessory building, is 7,191 square feet. That's going to house events and things that happen during the week. For the children, they have a cadets program, and they're going to have a workshop in there. They're going to have a maintenance and storage area, which takes the place of, there's actually 3 buildings we're tearing down, 3 like garages. They're kind of cruddy looking. Next time we can bring photos if we need to, but, and then the parsonage, that's going to be tore down and replaced with all these new buildings. The accessory building, though technically it doesn't really need to meet the civic ordinance for the things that are right on Ridge Road. We designed a, we believe, a beautiful front to the building and side. And so that building is going to be phase 1 in construction. I'll talk about that in a second. So the design features, if you can put the rendering up, Tom. Oh, you know what? I got to get to the pastors. Let's let the pastors share the vision first before I go.
We have a huge pack tonight. Is there any way you might be able to email it to us for that? I mean, I'm just saying because it's like 10 minutes long.
Well, yeah, it's up to you guys.
You know, I mean, it's up to you.
It's about 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
3 minutes. No, 3 minutes? All right, go ahead and play it.
Good evening to the Munster, Indiana Planning Commission. My name is Jim Hollandoner, and I've had the honor of being the pastor of Munster Church for just about 4 years. I stand here on the stage of Munster Church. Now, granted, this wasn't the original building, but this is the sanctuary that has lasted the longest over Munster's 153-year history of being an organized congregation. This congregation has always tried to be a leader in our community while making positive community impact. And the discussion that you guys will have before you tonight, one that we've talked about once already, and I know will continue in the future, is expanding the physical footprint of Munster Church. But more important than the brick and mortar, though that is important, is really the growing impact of change we're looking to make in a positive direction. One of the things that we're going to work with is local ministries, local companies, local opportunities to make impact in the lives of people that call Munster Church home. One of the things I love about the building plans that we have worked diligently with our wonderful architects and the team here at Munster Church is that we want to make a good percentage of the use of the building for the community, helping local businesses with different events, supporting the town of Munster and all of its events, but also allowing for some community space to be used for English as second language, for teen mother ministries, our food pantry, to helping those in need in partnership with churches all around Northwest Indiana and Southwest Chicago. But we also know that the rooms and the classrooms and the multi-purpose rooms and the nurseries and the eating areas of this new building, we really want it to be a gift for the community. We want Munster Church to be a safe place for people to meet. We want this church to be a regular place where community can come to feel safe, to feel heard, and to utilize the strengths and giftings of the people of Munster and the people of Munster Church. And we think here at Munster Church, in partnership with the town, with all of you, with other churches and other organizations, to be able to be that place here at 214 Ridge Road. Because as you'll see, being on Ridge Road means that there's always a lot of movement, a lot of people, a lot of things going on. One of the things that I'm excited about this summer is to take part in our Tulip Festival. And one of the things you'll see here in this Tulip, it talks a lot about the heritage of this church and of this area. But we also want to be rooted in this church and in this area. That's another reason why as we extend going eastward and hopefully, Lord willing, putting that outbuilding in the back, this will just exemplify the rootedness that Munster Church has had with the town of Munster, with all of those that call this area home. Now, I know that you guys are going to go easy on Ted and you're gonna go easy on Torringa, and you're gonna go easy on all those guys, and I pray that it's a wonderful conversation. But know that if you ever have any questions, or you wanna check out what God's doing here, by all means, you are more than welcome to come any day of the week, but especially Sundays from 9:30 to 10:30. God bless you, and God bless the rest of your meeting.
See the landscape there?
Yes.
So they beautified that corner already, and to answer one of your questions, that theme of landscaping is going to extend across the whole existing building and then the front of the new addition because of the ridge, like you mentioned. One of the reasons they wanted to remove the stairs is because when they have events like weddings and stuff, it's, as you saw, the pastor came down a few steps and then there's a flat level and then it goes many more steps to lead right to the street. They feel it's dangerous for the kids. Nobody really walks to their church anymore. Everybody drives to church, and the entrance is in the back. So we're not removing the entries, but they want to make that a beautiful platform that's safe for the kids, safe for weddings, and have it landscaped across the front. We do have access to the back with a sidewalk on the east that will lead to the ADA accesses in the back of the building. So that was the reasoning for why we did that. So I'll just make a quick roll because I know you've got a lot going on here tonight. But the site, the building design, if you could put up the renderings, Tom, and then I'll quit talking. We wanted to capture the existing architecture that's been there. And so our goal was to bring something new and exciting, but then it still works with the existing architecture. It doesn't look like you've attached something modern to something old. And so we've got renderings of the front and the back. And so that's the plan. By removing some of the buildings and stuff, even though we don't have as many landscape islands, because it is an existing park, we added some islands, but we're adding a lot more landscaping where we're moving the buildings too. So I think with that said, I'll quit talking and try to answer any of the questions you have.
One of the questions I had was obviously the amount of people coming, more space. We have adequate dumpster facilities for it.
Yeah, so that's what are you handling with dumpsters right now?
We have it in an enclosed vinyl fence by the parsonage.
So do you think that'll be adequately sized? I mean, we can analyze that, but if we need to expand that, we will.
I think per code, you have to go to a solid Main Street structure, don't you? The vinyl fence that we reworked to match the building materials.
That's correct.
Is that even when you're doing an addition?
To bring up the code, the trash.
That whole area is gonna be double,
Yes,
right?
by the parsonage, yes.
That's what he said, it's the.
Yeah, parsonage is going away, that's replaced.
Okay.
Right.
Well, we can meet the code with a new dumpster, masonry dumpster enclosure, if that's what needs to happen.
Now, is all the existing green space, is that brought up and irrigated?
The Ridge Road is irrigated from about the church to the corner, and then the islands go down home and are also irrigated when we put those in.
Okay. How about the rest of the green space now you're bringing up the code?
Now, the rest of the green space is really the cemetery that's not irrigated, so, right.
What are the hours of operation with the new, with all the new stuff that's gonna be happening?
Well, the addition is primarily for Sunday mornings.
Okay.
It's relieving the space they need for children's ministry. They will have a few things during the week. The multi-purpose room is for Sunday mornings, children's worship. But like Pastor said, if I know like Cross Point Church in Crown Point, they work with the town and they allow them to use it for public meetings or training, whatever. So that could be a multi-use, for other uses. The cadet building would be primarily used for maintenance. Food pantry would be during the week, and whenever the cadets do. Yeah, and that's usually on weeknights.
Yes.
So
It's a limited impact in the area.
yes, absolutely.
Any other questions for the petitioner?
I do. Going back to the lighting again, sir. I'm not understanding why you guys are not moving up the code in regards to the parking lot and actually diminishing the lights in the parking lot from what Tom has mentioned, and you're trying to get a variance from that. So I'm not understanding that when you truly want to have your parking lot lit up so that it can be a safe place for people to actually park. So I'm not understanding why.
Okay, I can answer that. if you look at the photometric plan, there's just a few minute little areas that don't meet the 0.4. It's not a big area, and it's near the south end of the parking lot, the drive, and we cannot spill light over onto the residential neighborhood. So that's the other reason we're asking for a variance for the light type fixture, because acorn lights, you can't direct the light. Acorn lights shine light in all directions. So we have lighting that specifically will throw lights in the way that we want. We have KSA lighting to our lighting design. And so when you position the poles, we've managed to keep bleeding off of the property lines, but there's just a few small spots that are below 0.4. It's not this big area. And if you look closely at the photometric, maybe it's too small on yours. There's just a little bit of area that doesn't meet it.
So you're saying, so Tom, so let me understand what you just said. We were trying to get them to put acorn lights inside the parking lot, or I thought they didn't want to put the acorn light up in the front area where they're not. You said there was two issues with the light.
Yeah,
I only see one of the variances listed in here. That's why I'm asking about the other one.
so the variance would be for the type of lighting as well as the amount of lighting. So go back here. This is the photometric plan, right? So there's an area here which doesn't meet that minimum standard.
Can you zoom into that, Tom? Is that possible? And that's the south end where the residential homes are located.
So just to be clear, the minimum illumination is 0.4 foot candles. And so you can see this into this area here, essentially right here, does not meet that standard. The standard has permits a range, right? And that's the minimum. There's a range that's permitted as the average, and then there's a floor, which is 0.4.
But it's very hard to not bleed the light over without, and meet this, the 0.4 close to the property. So that's the challenge. So we designed it to, that's the darkest part of the whole parking lot, is the very south end where the homes are.
So were you planning on putting the acorn front fixtures inside the parking lot, or you're
No.
out on Bridge Road?
All, go ahead.
So that's the second variance, which is the type of fixture. And yeah, our code requires the ornamental style fixtures within the parking lot.
Within the parking lot.
Correct.
Gotcha. Okay. I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Pond there, Mr. Trang, is that that's a dry pond, I assume?
Yes, it is. This is Don Torring, Torring Engineering, 907 Road, Munster. This entire area is sand, as you know. So what we have done here, because there are no storm sewers anywhere, is we have dug a hole in the ground, and we have supplied, with the help of Joe, we have supplied information as to how the water will sink into that sand, and we have sized that pond considerably larger than the amount of water that's actually going into it. Now, we've done that for two reasons. The first reason is because they need the sand in order to fill in where the new buildings are going to go in order to create the foundations. And the second reason is because we have gone through a long process and we determined there's a crest in the middle of the property where stormwater drains towards Ridge Road and then it drains towards the back of the property. We determined that the water that falls and goes towards Ridge Road by tearing down the buildings, even with the addition of the large new building, there's more green space and there's more pervious area than there was previously. So by basically, there's no written standard, but the town has said through the town engineer, through the planning department, that we don't need to do any detention up there. The rear of the property is being changed because we're adding the building. So there's a small increase in the impervious area. So that's why we did the bond is dry.
Have you done any soil borings? Is it pretty consistent, or is there no warning sand, or what the water elevation is down there?
We have not done soil borings, but basically the soil maps for that area show the entire, everything within 500 feet of this property in all directions, plain field sand, which is beach sand.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Tringa, how are you? Okay. 14,000 square feet of additional building, and I saw your letter in here. Can you help me with the parking ratio and how that works, especially not only just with services, but with the potential for events?
I think Ted can answer that.
And we provided Tom with the calculations that we came up with, so that the amount.
Based on what?
Based on the amount of sanctuary seats
And
currently, and that's not increasing, we're not increasing the sanctuary. And then we have, we took the worst case scenario, which is we calculated the accessory building, and we used the IBC standards to develop the occupant load. And then we divided that by or multiplied it by the 0.3 and came up with a parking ratio. Then we did the multi-purpose room as if you did 1 per 3 seats there. And we use the multi-purpose room as the maximum. And when you add the sanctuary and the children's ministries, we comply with the parking.
so answer my question, please, Mr. Katz, as it relates to the event space. Is that what you're calling the multi-purpose room or the accessory room?
The multi-purpose room is part of the children's ministry, which is their
And
worship.
if I want to rent the space and have a party or a wedding or a reception, is that where that is? And how many people would be maximum for that type of an event? And how does the parking ratio equate to an event in the multi-purpose room?
The multi-purpose room is 222 seats if you set up just seating like for a worship service.
And you get 1 per every 3 of those?
Yes.
1 parking space? And then with the sanctuary, Tom, does that meet whatever parking requirement for the new zoning?
Yes, yeah, the overall parking ratio for the entire church building, including the offices, classrooms, multi-purpose room, is based on the number of seats within the sanctuary.
So are we adding more to what's already there?
So we are,
And how many?
we are adding more. So we're adding more square footage and more use to the building, but we're still within the parking standards. So there's actually fewer parking spaces being
Really?
proposed because they're taking.
First time ever, you had 14,000 square feet and you still have enough parking?
Yeah, they have huge parking lots.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
two.
they were over-designed initially.
So the overall parking on site is getting reduced from 228 spaces to 211. They only are required to have 186.
So they need that.
They exceed it.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Katz, did you utilize any of the Munster streetscape plans or any of those ideas and incorporate into this design as it relates to being along Ridge Road?
I believe Cruz did the landscape plan, so I can't speak completely for him, but he's exceeded it, except there is a provision we're asking for variance for the number of shade trees. But he cannot meet that standard, and that's why we're asking for variance, because there's utility lines and there's.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff there.
You just can't do it. So if you see what they've done, we've exceeded what you normally would have to do. It's just, there's gonna be a few less shade trees.
And my last question is, what is the importance of the curb cut on Ridge Road?
The curb cut on Ridge Road exists.
That's my question. I understand that. What's the importance of that to the operation? Is that something that you might consider helping us with as we try to eliminate curb cuts along Ridge Road?
I think that it's vital that they keep that. We narrowed it down. It's a very wide opening now, and on recommendations of staff, we narrowed it to a 24-foot wide opening.
Ted mentioned the fact that, may I jump in here?
Absolutely. They knew you'd like this one.
You see the L-shaped area, that's cemetery. On the north side of the cemetery, there's about a 12-foot wide drive there between the church and the cemetery, and they can't go any further, otherwise they have to move graves. On the south side, there's the same thing, the 12-foot entrance. So if you get rid of the entrance on Ridge Road, then the only entrances you have are off of Holman Avenue. There's only one, and that one entrance
would have to go through, everybody would have to go through those two 12-foot wide aisles to get to the east side of the church.
Well, I mean, Mr. Tring, along Holman Avenue on the south, what would be south end of the property, there's a potential for another curb cut down there, wouldn't there be?
There is, but you still have the same issue of which you don't have enough room between the south property line and the cemetery and the church and the north part of the cemetery. There's only 12 feet in both of those. In other words, it would be one way in, one way out.
Is that curb cut on Ridge Road, full curb cut?
Yes.
It is, that close to the intersection. Is there consideration for reviewing with staff the safety concerns as it relates to that? And have you had any issues there from a use standpoint regarding, Ridge Road getting in and out, especially making the left?
I mean, Sunday mornings is when the mass majority of.
Absolutely.
And there's very little traffic Sunday morning when we're having services.
As far as the comment regarding the staff, that entrance is about 35 feet wide now, and we've reduced it down to 24.
And isn't it on a grade though, too?
It is, it is.
Just asking. Thank you.
Adjacent to it, just east of it too, is where we're removing some of those garages and accessory buildings. So that'll all be replaced by landscaping across Ridge Road, so. Feel like we're actually really improving that part of the site for what's there.
Time to just look at the sideline there because of the elevation and looking right and left and see what that looks like. So the landscaping doesn't create a Munster Shops type of issue that we ran into before having to remove the grade so people can see left and right when they're pulling out. That would be another thing to take into consideration. Thank you.
Okay, that wasn't reviewed, but we can look at that.
I assume the foundation would be below frost level.
Absolutely.
They'll check all the grades around the property, see how it blends into existing. The brick ledge will be at the elevation of the artist feet.
Yes, sir.
So, put it on record there. What we're looking for. I'd recommend, obviously, there's 12 or so variances. This is good dialogue tonight. We'll open it up to the public for comment. But I think we should continue this conversation based on the Board of Zoning Appeals public hearing next month, since some of us sit on both boards of the Plan Commission and BZA. Any other comments? Is there anyone here that would like to speak on it? I see a hand up. If you would like, come on up and say your name and address for the record.
Council. Good evening, my neighbors, Munster here. My name is Anand Ayad. I'm a neighbor to the Munster Church at 223 Terrace Drive. I'm here representing myself. I own that home. And my neighbor, Jesse Reyes at 217 Terrace Drive. He's had surgery this afternoon, and last I checked, he was heavily drugged, so let's wish him a speedy recovery. I'd like to open by saying that I am very happy and proud to be a neighbor to such a foundational organization that uses such positive effect in our neighborhood. And I would much rather be a neighbor to a church than a hall or club or any kind of establishment. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. In regards to the variances, I've reviewed these documents briefly today, and I have a few things that we would like to bring to the attention of the council and the board members of the church and the engineering firm working with them. To get those out of the way, I'd like to start with water drainage. On page 8 of the document submitted, please pull that up, on the top of the page. As it stands right now, the water drainage, stormwater drainage on the east parking lot is somewhat abysmal. There's 3 storm drains on the southmost part of the parking lot further right. The rest of the water runs to the south, directly where my property and the adjacent properties are. This has been previously mitigated by building trying to compact a 6-inch deep, thick asphalt barrier that channels the water out. At the time that the asphalt barrier is functional, the water runs down further west, all the way to Holman Avenue, right past the cemetery and the west side parking lot. It runs down Holman Avenue to the corner of Hammond and Terrace, and it whirlpools through right by the storm drain in that area. If the intensity of the rainfall increases, it will rise and across the crown of the road to the storm drain across the street on Terrace Avenue. But during snow removal operations in the wintertime, a part of that barrier had been broken off and we had water runoff into my neighbor's backyards. I'm lucky to be on a slab. Jesse's not, he has a basement with water issues. So that's as far as the water goes. The water does come up into my garage and it flows inside my garage when we have heavier rain. As for the snow removal part of this, it's my first year living in the house. That was my first winter. I've been informed by my neighbors that snow was removed or cleaned from north to south. To draw a clearer picture for you, there's a 6-foot difference in grade between my parking lot, my neighbors, and the parking lot of the church with a very steep ditch. My fence is at the bottom of the 6 feet, so that part of the easement, if the snow gets pushed there, my fence had since collapsed, and I find myself often cleaning cups, garbage, things that get blown off the street or bags of Grantil into that ditch. Last year, after it's been brought to the attention of my neighbors, they've done their due diligence and the snow was cleared from west to east onto the empty space where they plan on building an accessory building right now. So my question would be, what are our plans as far as snow removal once that building does exist in that space? It's a beautiful landscape right out of it. Side note, beautiful design on the building, I love it. So that's storm drainage, snow removal. The easement is currently overgrown, especially right behind 217. There are trees, other things that do not get attended to unless my neighbor and I help each other and partake in cleaning it out and cutting down all the overgrown vegetation under the power lines. Last but not least, we have a slight privacy concern with the grade difference. On a Sunday morning, as a family goes up to church, I think that this physique in boxers is not what they want to see. I would like to politely just suggest that the church is interested in building a fence on the higher part of the great parking lot. I believe myself and my neighbors would greatly appreciate it. Not to mention, as the foot traffic increases for such community building activities within that space, there's going to be more and more people arriving to that church parking their vehicles there. And like I said, it's probably not what they have to see. As per the lighting variance, I would like to inform you that me and my neighbors who might chime in on Zoom shortly are in support of it. As it sits right now, there's one lighting fixture in that parking lot that is blaring into my backyard, and I had to replace some lights because that's the side of my house that I sleep on, so I can sleep better. Mainly, we believe that it's beneficial for us as neighbors to not have the lights overflow into our backyards and onto our homes. You're welcome to stop by tonight. I don't have much to offer. I haven't cooked today, but you guys come and take a look, see what it looks like. Not to mention, just going back to the privacy point, that seems to be a very popular spot for Munster police, which we welcome support, and I would like them to catch their breaks there. I'm just doing my thing in my backyard, and I do not want to make them uncomfortable. Neither do I want myself to make them uncomfortable being there. It also appears to be a bus staging area early in the earlier hours of the day. One or multiple buses typically park there, stage, or do something. So the commercial plaza directly to the east of it, where Applebee's is, seem to have a PVC fence that stands about like 8 feet tall. There's such a beautiful fence that existed just so we can grant, the church their privacy. We can have ours. Like I said, the last thing that I want to do is be out and accept in the backyard and a grieving family with that cemetery fine. box or dude out in his backyard doing something, so. That's it, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
No, thank you. Trying, I'm sure you can address the water issues for next month, to make sure that water
Yes,
is running over
yes.
to other properties, or come up with a plan to make sure it's not running over properties. Almost like we did with the Castle, the Castle subdivision and those neighbors, right?
I will look into it, yes.
That's the pieces I have looked at, images that I haven't had a chance to turn into a physical copy. If the council wishes, I can show them, I can show you the electronic copy or.
In this meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals has already set this for next month, so there'll be another chance for you to come and take care of proceedings. Second Tuesday.
Will I receive another letter for that one, or do I just have to look up the? No, there'll be another certified. Yes. Right, thought I was getting super here too.
Is anyone else here to speak on this, this matter? I think there's, right?
That's the same as. It's gone down. No, I'm not seeing anybody on Zoom.
Michael's not there anymore.
Michael, did you have your hand up for this item as well?
No, I'm still here, but I had nothing to say on this one. Thanks.
Well, I'll ask one more time, going once, going twice. I'll close the meeting and bring it back to the commission. What's the pleasure of board? I mentioned earlier, there's about a dozen issues that has to be worked out at the Board of Zoning meeting. Obviously, there's some drainage and neighbor concerns. I think it'd be in the best interest to continue this next month.
I make a motion to set.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next time we have PC docket number 22008, Spin Munster LLC, represented by Gary Wolfo, requesting approval of preliminary plat for Mara addition to the town of Munster, commercial subdivision located in southwest corner of Timber Manor, Fisher Street, formerly the Lansing Country Club. I'll start this off with a staff report, and I'll turn the floor to you, Tom.
Thank you. I'm going to try to find an exhibit that can be back and forth. Driving this. So I'm just gonna move in on this here. Yeah, on page 3 of the staff report. This is a request for approval of a preliminary plat for a commercial subdivision. It's located at the southwest corner of Timberrick Drive, Manor Avenue, Fisher Street, formerly the Lansing Country Club. There is no Munster address, which is why we described it like that. So this site is currently accessed only from Illinois, from Burnham Avenue. The proposal is to subdivide this 59-acre parcel, which is, as I said, located sort of at the terminus of Fisher Street, into as a commercial subdivision. So what they're proposing to do is, see it here on the image here. But they're proposing the first phase, which is named phase 2 of the development of the country club. And it involves the subdivision of commercial lots shown here. So you can see this is an extension of Fisher Street going into former Lansing Country Club property. This street here, which is called Ken Mara Boulevard, which will then extend through the site, ultimately to connect up with an extension here to the southeast of Maple Leaf Boulevard, which is an undeveloped road which enters, extends from Calumet Avenue west, south of Pepsi, through the Maple Leaf crossing development. It'll be extended into the site here. As I said, this is called phase 2 of the project. Phase 1 is that Fisher Street extension, phase 1A. Phase 1B is the Maple Leaf Boulevard extension. Both of those phases involve multiple agreements. They traverse NIPSCO property. They involve dedication of roadway to the town of Munster, the use of Munster right-of-way here along Pensy Trail, which is why they're proposing to move forward with this phase 2. And what that includes is the platting of 38 acres of the overall 59-acre tract into a series of development lots, which are shown here as having these purple-ish buildings on them, an extension of the roadway, the installation of a central civic space, which is also a stormwater retention pond. Then the sort of dedication of, or not, I should call it dedication, but sort of an existing, an additional large lot in the southeast corner of the property, which is being reserved as a potential additional public use. And then, so that's phase 2, that's that commercial subdivision. The remainder of the site would be left as unsubdivided. It's just being called a block. So that portion is not being addressed in this application tonight. There is currently no development plan for any individual site. What there is an overall kind of development plan for the subdivision. So in your staff report, or as one of the attachments, you'll see there's a public landscaping plan which describes how the streets will be landscaped, how the public open spaces will be landscaped, including this central civic space, as well as this landscape buffer on the north side of the property. And thoroughfare plan, which details the cross sections of the roadways, and some other exhibits which kind of talk about the overall trail connectivity, as well as the lot sizes and stormwater plan. So all of those aspects are included in this. As I said, the proposal tonight is for just simply approval of this preliminary plat. This is probably the best picture to show you, but we reviewed this not only simply as a plat as it's shown here, but how it all sort of interacts with the rest of the site. So I'm just going to go through a couple different aspects of it. I'm going to leave the same picture out, but there's, as I said, there's more detailed plans and more detailed documents, and I'm sure the applicant will want to run through some of those things. So I'm going to just kind of go through some of the aspects of the site. The first is thoroughfares and the access points. As I stated, the access is at two places, Fisher Street and Maple Leaf Boulevard. Both of those are undeveloped currently. We have seen plans for those extensions. However, as I mentioned, because of the various agreements that need to take place and swapping of land and easements, they're not being proposed for approval tonight.
How long will that take, Tom? So I don't forget about that question as you keep going on.
That's a good question. As I mentioned, it does involve, as you can see, Fisher Street passes through the NIPSCO property, NIPSCO right of way. Maple Leaf Boulevard also passes through NIPSCO right away.
And the trains go right there.
Correct. And that's a great point.
So we're not approving, how do we get in and out? We're approving only now, or the request is for what's there? What were they gonna put there if they could get there?
That's correct, yes.
If they get there or when they get there.
When they get there. So yes, there are some ongoing discussions. I can't state specifically when those will be resolved, but they're underway. NICD has already provided, which is the Central Railroad, has provided an easement underneath the future railroad bridge, which will, this is the extension of the South Shore Railroad. Right about here, it'll go up on a bridge so that it can cross over 45th Street. And there's an area here which has been reserved as an easement for this roadway to connect. Discussions are ongoing, and I'm sure the applicant could probably give us an update on where the discussions are with respect to Maple Leaf Boulevard crossing over this NIPSCO property, as well as Fisher Street being extended through the NIPSCO property here. What you can't see in this image as well is a reconfiguration of Timrick Drive in Evergreen Park and the intersection of Manor Avenue. Those discussions are also ongoing. Those plans have been presented to the Parks Department and the Park Board, and they've reviewed it, given us a tentative conditional approval to that as well. But does that answer your question?
Yes, we're not talking about how to get in and out.
Well, I would say we are, but as far as taking any action tonight, it's just with respect to this plat.
Which is phase 2, which is inside the blue hashed lines.
Correct. So I'll scroll a little bit farther down here, trying not to move the screen too much. But this is the plat that's being presented for approval tonight. As it said, it's the initial development lots located along this NIPSCO right of way. The dedication of Ken Mara Boulevard, a portion of this South Loop Street, and a portion of this West Loop Street on the north. And then this outlot here is that detention area that was identified in the picture. So as I said, so the site is accessed by those two roadways, which are yet to be fully approved and made. And those would come to the Plan Commission for approval as well. I will note that there was a traffic study that was prepared that specifically looked at the impact of this initial phase 1, which is 300,000 square feet of commercial office space. That study did provide a number of recommendations, which are included in your staff report. What those recommendations include are providing access from Fisher Street, providing access in a signalized intersection at Maple Leaf Boulevard, realignment of that Timrick Drive at Evergreen Park, and as well as dedicated left turn lanes on the east and west legs of Fisher Street where it intersects with Manor Avenue. So those are the recommendations. I know at the preliminary hearing, there was a question as to whether or not Fisher Street would require any additional improvements. And the answer to that was not under this phase 2, not with this phase 2 development. So again, we reviewed these according to the standards for a subdivision. So we looked at block sizes, which is that standard that's being met. Civic space, as I mentioned, there's a central civic space, stormwater retention pond. It's being landscaped, and that would be landscaped and improved according to our standards. The public landscaping plan is provided Trail connectivity is shown. There's a connection between, and again, like I said, there are more detailed exhibits on all this, but there's a trail connection being provided through this completion of the Pensy Greenway, which would parallel Maple Leaf Boulevard through here. It would pass under the railroad tracks in a dedicated viaduct and then extend northwest to connect with the existing Pensy Greenway. There would also be a spur of that trail that would enter into the development of the southeast, kind of go around the pond and then connect up with the trails. There's been discussion of an additional trail connection to Illinois. That I would say is the preliminary plat in a nutshell. I mean, those are the standards that we review to a preliminary plat. I will note that they are seeking a number of waivers from our subdivision ordinance. This is something that we've been discussing also with the Community Foundation project. You might remember that's something that the Planning Commission is authorized to do, which is grant these waivers. And what they're requesting is a waiver from the minimum right-of-way width on a commercial street of 100 feet. This main section here, as well as these streets within the development, are all shown to be 80-foot right-of-way. So they do not meet the 100-foot minimum right-of-way standard. I'll also note that they don't meet any one of our thoroughfare standards, which actually this type of street would be 76-foot right-of-way. And so we're requesting that they amend the plat to meet that standard. And then the second waiver that they're requesting is for from the maximum lot depth of 300 feet. And there is a lot here on the southeast corner, which, as I noted, is kind of being reserved for public use, which exceeds that. So any approval tonight would also require approval of the waivers. I also want to just note that there was a number of conditions that we would be asking for on any approval. The first is that phase 1A and phase 1B be approved in all of sort of the necessary, the way I phrase it is all necessary easements, agreements, and approvals, both by the town and third parties, be made and approved for the completion of phase 1 and phase 1A and phase 1B, as shown on the development plans. In other words, Bill, to your comment about we're approving the development without the access to the development, what my recommendation would be to approve the development contingent upon the receipt of the final approvals for those access points. And then there are a few revisions to the plat that we're asking for. Just very kind of small things, but section 26-340 requires that property line corners be rounded by an arc of 20 feet. So we're asking that that be a condition of approval, that the plat be amended to show that. As I mentioned, we're asking that the plat be revised to show either a 76-foot wide right-of-way, so a right-of-way that would meet our standard, or an alternative thoroughfare type that could have an 80-foot right-of-way. Fourthly, there is Jill, our town engineer / town manager, deputy town manager, can speak to this as well, but the town is working with NICD, South Shore Railroad, to relocate a water line, which is currently on the east side of this railroad right-of-way to the west side. And there's a 15-foot easement shown on the plat. We're just requesting as a condition that the easement be widened to a sufficient width so that it would allow the town to access that water line when it's relocated. And then finally, we're asking that all the final stormwater and engineering plans be subject to a final review by the town engineer. So that is that's the report on the plat. Now, as I mentioned, there are a number of different exhibits that have been provided, and those are all sort of supporting documents for the approval of this plat, but those are the standards for the review of the plat itself.
Any questions for Tom?
Are there any examples of what that civic space would be? I'm just trying to think of what kind of civic use we want to be over there. Like church or school or.
Oh, so it would be a park.
Oh, okay. I just noticed there were 2 blocks there that looked like buildings, so those are just.
Let me do this. There is a more, like I said, I didn't want to be jumping around on the, I didn't want to be jumping around on the screen. Hard for me to do that and focus on taking the report, but this is a set of exhibits that was presented at the previous preliminary hearing. And I'm sure Gary would, the applicant would be happy to go through this, but essentially this is a commercial office building with a small restaurant potentially on the corner here, but the majority of the
Oh,
civic
that's
space.
Well, the one at the bottom, right?
building.
those are-
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
so
those are civic, right? Is that?
yeah, so there's been some very preliminary discussion about relocating the public works garage to that site. So I will say that that's an idea being proposed by the applicant, and it has not really been approved in any way by the town. It's simply been proposed. The town has not endorsed the idea in any way, but that site is being sort of set aside as not developed at this time.
Yes.
I'm just curious, is it because, what is the purpose of moving it down? I know it hasn't been, discussed fully, it hasn't been approved or anything, but if we were to move the public works down there, what is the benefit we're seeing to both ends?
Well, again, this is not an idea that's being proposed by the town or anybody in the town. It's being proposed by the developer. And I would say from his perspective, it is potentially part of a swap that could be made to acquire the existing public works property. So the town would trade the property in exchange for this lot in the back, which would give the town potentially a larger piece of land for public works yards and storage and things like that. But it's
So we're
really,
not there yet. Okay. I was
no
just-
one in the town has said, yes, let's do it. It's very much just developer driven at this point.
Okay.
I have a quick question, sorry. Why are we talking about phase 2 when phase 1 isn't even complete or near being completed? What's the benefit of talking about this preliminary plot right now? Why is it in front of us if we don't have phase 1 almost done?
Well, it's in front of you because the developer has applied for preliminary plat approval. Why is it going in this order?
Right. We're talking about 2 before 1's done.
I would say that the reason why the applicant is, he could probably speak to that, but
Yeah, he will.
my sense is that there's a desire to sort of begin the approval process. And because this property is fully within the developer's control, it's a piece of property that he can actually move forward on getting actual approval on, which is just one of the many steps that this project has to undergo. Now, that being said, what we're recommending, and I think what the applicant is expecting, is a conditional approval. So the preliminary plat would be approved, but the number of conditions on it would have to be met before it actually, the approval went into effect. So while it seems like we're approving it out of order, the actual approval wouldn't go into effect until the other approvals have been made. So the order would be, I think, in good order, so to speak.
So phase 2 will never occur until phase 1 occurs.
Right.
Right.
That would be the recommendation
completely phase one would be completed 100% before phase two can even be touched.
There's no way to access the site.
Understand, well, you still have Fisher.
That would be, so that's phase 1A. Right, so phase 1A and phase is the access point for Fisher, which is not, I mean, you can't get to it. Right
And then my other question was, you were talking about the roads. So the roads that are gonna actually be narrower. You're talking about 80 feet and 100 feet.
So, yeah, let me,
So is
See
the
if
roads
there's a
gonna
good-
be, so are the roads themselves gonna be narrower, they're inside the?
no, let me see if I can pull up a good. Zoom in here that would show that. What they're proposing is actually, the right of way is, they're proposing is 80 feet, which is similar to the right of way for Ridge Road, which is 80 feet wide. But in our subdivision ordinance, we say for a business street, it has to be 100-foot wide right of way. Now, there's a bit of a discrepancy between our subdivision ordinance and our zoning ordinance, because our subdivision ordinance specifies as 100 feet wide, but our zoning ordinance has a list of thoroughfare types that correspond to sort of different types of characters in different zoning districts. In this zoning district, there is one that's a 76-foot wide right of way. It has 2 10-foot lanes, on-street parking, parkway, and sidewalks on either side. So that comprises the entire 76 feet of right of way. There are other thoroughfare types that could be wider. So there could be a road that's 100 feet wide, but that would involve, 2 lanes, a landscaped median, on-street parking, parkways, and sidewalks. So the landscape median would increase the width of the right of way.
And then the other thing is, all these buildings that are in this block right now is primarily commercial. So there's no residential or any type of putting any type of condos or anything in here. This is all just business buildings.
That's correct.
Because it says commercial / office building, so I just want to make sure this, in this phase 2, this is primarily all business building territory.
Yeah, that's correct. So what's being shown here conceptually is 4 45,000 square foot buildings and 2 60,000 square foot commercial office buildings, each of which is between 3 and 4 stories tall. I will also note that, again, this is the plat, and the development of each site would be subject not to the subdivision ordinance, but to the zoning ordinance, and the standards of the zoning ordinance would be applied to each individual lot as it gets developed, and that would be coming back to the planning commission for approval of the development plan.
Okay.
Tom, do you see this like Centennial Village where you're coming up with a developmental plan agreement of uses, just like we did there? What can go in here, what can't, if there's town money and set up this project?
Yeah, so that's a good point. There are some other approvals and things that are sort of underway, one of which is the approval of the development agreement, which has been sort of under negotiation between the town and the developer.
And include building standards and types and materials, just like we did with Centennial Village.
In this instance, they don't intend to develop it as a planned unit development, which is what Centennial Village is, and that's why they did that detailed set of design standards. So what their intent is to simply develop it under its current zoning, which is CD4B, so it would comply with all of the existing standards of our but that's why, again, so that's why you don't see in this,
Yeah, so
you don't see building renderings or anything like that.
Any other questions for Tom? That being said, I'll turn it over to petitioner. Gary, would you like to speak? Name and address, you know,
Got Gary Warfeld, Saxon Partners, 25 Recreation Park Drive, Hingham, Mass. 02043. That's our corporate location. I actually live and work locally. I'm going to go fast because I know it's running late, and I just want to make a few observations. And I know there's a lot of people here who might want to comment, so that might be the best use of our time to answer some questions. But first off, just to in terms of the staff report, we're in concurrence with that. The roadway sections, we can make them narrower, we can make them wider, we can work within those confines. Probably the bigger issue, and I think that you hit, is why are we here for phase 2 subdivision plan when we don't have phase 1 and 1A and 1B locked down? I'm happy to report that we've come to agreement with NIPSCO this week. With PepsiCo, NICD, we've already had agreement. So the town will be getting a copy of the letter of intent from NIPSCO to grant access on 1A and 1B. The reason we did go in reverse is because of the timing of things. We clearly do not expect to get any kind of approval on phase 2 other than the ability to subdivide until phase 1A and 1B get done, which themselves have a substantial amount of conditions. But we've come to terms with on all those conditions, which we will we'll talk about in the upcoming months. The other thing we plan to do is we have a website done today, which is based on community outreach. We intend to load all of our documents that we've transmitted back and forth onto that website to allow members of the community to see it. We won't launch that until we give it to the town, which we'll probably do tomorrow, so that we can be transparent with as much information as possible. Just one other quick comment, Leanne, on the parcel to the southeast. We thought that might be a good idea for Public Works to build another new facility. We just scratched the surface. Our goal there is to beautify and enhance Fisher Street as much as possible. And we're also in discussions with NIPSCO about possibly taking that confluence of overhead power and utility and make it a little more beautiful. And that's why we're also working on the parks, expanding Evergreen Park. We have concurrence from the Planning Commission on that. So we will then open up all of the trail space to take the trails around the North Lake on the Indiana side, all the way down to southwest to Centennial Park. So there's a real big emphasis, you can't tell on without looking deep into the plans, on our greenway interconnectivity, open space, and parks. On the land use and planning, we're going with existing zoning. We're not looking for variances. We're not looking for changes of use or density. In fact, our density plan is about 70% of what the allowable density is, so that we can keep the park as much open space as possible. So we're not looking for variances or waivers on zoning or land use. And no residential. It's commercial, generally geared towards healthcare, and it'll be very consistent with what you've seen over the last 3 years in the development along Kelvin Avenue. Pardon me?
I just had a question, but go ahead.
Okay, that's it. I'd just like to make myself available for questions. We'll go from there.
Okay. I know the traffic study was done in March of 22, 2022, which is pretty recent, but I've noticed obviously being on the roads, the uptick of travel and COVID and stuff. So did the traffic study particularly or at least taken some extra traffic counts, regarding people not working at home and going back in the office scenario and more people on the roads? Because my hour commute is taking me an hour and a half now from the city. So I just noticed that, it's from March to now, it's a different traffic scenario out there.
Our traffic engineer is here, and as well as our civil architectural and our marketing people. What we did do is we did the traffic study twice. We did it during COVID and we did it after COVID. So that traffic study that you currently have was done after COVID. I know that the traffic patterns seem to be changing. A lot of people not using public transportation. I think those will continue to evolve. But the study that we have now, the updated study that's filed with our package is a post-COVID.
So Kimberly Warren is pretty comfortable with the uptick of traffic post-COVID.
Yeah, that's consistent with DOT guidance. That,
Yep. We'll say name.
My name is Rory Fansler, split with Kimberly Horn. So DOT guidance is that current traffic volumes are generally consistent with pre-COVID, and they have removed use of any adjustment factors. The traffic counts, as Gary said, we did an initial traffic study that was based on some estimation during COVID, and then we actually went back and did data collection during more normalized conditions. No adjustment factor was applied for DOT guidance. And I do think the way the development is structured, this is the initial 300,000 square feet. The traffic study evaluates different phases of development, can be ongoing monitoring of traffic conditions and adjustments. There's a lot of different changes in traffic patterns and transit availability that are on the horizon, mobility options in the area. So the way that this is structured will allow us to continue to monitor conditions and make adjustments as necessary.
Do you see predominantly most of the traffic heading towards the expressway and
Yes.
back to Illinois?
Yes.
Okay. Instead of heading south of Route 30?
There is a portion of the traffic that heads south, but the predominant movement is to the north.
Any other questions? Any questions for Gary before I open it to public?
I have one. Mr. Warfel, can you help me understand why we're not looking at phase 3 and you're only proposing phase 2?
Great question. We're not entirely sure what to do with phase 3 yet. Our current plan would keep phase 3 consistent with the existing zoning. We'd like to walk before we run. And the other reason is that phase 3 will trigger some traffic improvements and upgrades at Fisher County.
Yes, they will.
Yeah, it will. So we don't, in the way that we've kind of worked together with the town in terms of this is let's only do what will not trigger signalization improvements, see how it goes. We're going to learn a lot during phase 2. So that's why in our subdivision plan, we show phase 3 as one lot. We're not asking for subdivision.
But a lot of things can happen, Gary, and if this happens and it's 1 million square feet, that's a significant amount of pressure that's going on Calumet Avenue that isn't getting accounted for under phase 2 improvement, that's all.
Yeah, because if we, I think phase 3, if we decide to do that, it'll be a different animal. There's no point in really trying to look at what phase 3 will be until we get comfortable with phase
So without knowing the hard surface of phase 3, how are you able to size the pond that's in phase 2?
We actually laid out the pond to maximize the site. And the pond is not just for stormwater. The pond is seen as, we have a trail system around it that will be publicly accessible. We see that to be more of a site amenity, an open space than just stormwater, but of course it is stormwater. That stormwater will be sized to handle maximum density for phase 2 and 3.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'll
Now it's your turn.
Now it's your turn. I'll open up the public hearing, but you need to come up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. If there's anyone from the public that would like to speak, now's your time.
Are you going?
I don't talk as well. I'm not a talker.
Are you going to speak?
Yes, I am going to speak.
Okay, go.
Well, whoever would like to speak,
Just line up, because
Line up.
I'm already past my
and just
bedtime.
name and address for the public record.
I live on 85 17 Forest Avenue, just a few houses away.
And I need your name for the
Oh,
record.
I'm sorry, Chris Whitener, PLEITNER.
Could you sign the sign-in sheet as well?
Lots of stuff, isn't it?
Government at work.
like I said, I live at 8517. I'm only a few houses away from Timber. And my concern is the impact of traffic. Is there going to be changes in traffic? It's bad now because our street is the main thoroughfare between Windward Avenue, which goes along to Timber, to Fisher, to Calumet Avenue. And during COVID, I was trying to get an extra stop sign, and they said that the state of Indiana requires at least 300 cars. So I quit counting after 40 minutes. I got to 300 cars. And so I just was wondering what kind of traffic impact with all these changes was going to have on that.
Thank you.
Oh, and then also too is that you talk about the redevelopment design of Timbrook and Evergreen. I just want to know approximately when that could occur and what the changes are going to be. I had heard rumor that there was going to be a roller put there. I can't imagine that. But if you can clear that up.
Did you want Gary to address something like, or?
Well, I'm just gonna say that I put up a more illustrative site plan, which kind of zooms out a little bit from the immediate site.
That's on House Grid Town.
Yeah, so you can see in the top of the picture here, this is the configuration of Timrick and Manor. So currently Timrick flows into Fisher Street. The proposal is to, and again, this is not, that proposal is not being approved tonight necessarily, but this is what's being approved tonight. This is phase 1A, so phase 1A includes this reconfiguration where Timwick sort of tees into Manor rather than flowing into Fisher. And then this is the phase 1B, which has the Maple Leaf Crossing being extended into the development from south of Pepsi, which is not shown on the map. It's right here, actually.
Can I just?
Sure,
So,
hold on one second.
Just to address the roundabout, yes, at one point, we did have a roundabout design. After we analyzed it, it took up too much area. We didn't think it was safe. Too many pedestrian crossings. So this is a simplification. So there is no
Standard roadway. Your turn. Name, address, and sign in.
My name is Kathleen Hernandez, 8733 Manor Avenue. And one of my major concerns with this is the way they want to reconfigure Timmerick, Manor, Fisher. People, I'm sure there's people here who have lived on Timmerick, and what, last year it was 6 months, 8 months, 7 months, they went through gravel pits and mud, couldn't get in and out of their driveways. All that traffic came down Manor. We're gonna have to go through this again for according to their time schedule, it looks like 9 months in the winter. How the plow is gonna get through, that's number one. And then you have timber cutting directly into two homes. There's the two homes there, 8837 and 8841. It cuts directly, and if you can see it better on, what is it? Figure 5C in his little package from Saxon Partners. But it goes directly into two homes. So they're gonna have the nuisance of headlights coming into their homes at night. Not to mention the fact that we have a propensity here in Munster of running into buildings.
It's not funny, man.
No, it's not funny, that's the problem. These people are sitting there with a new threatening traffic thing coming straight through and into their houses, if possible. You can put up concrete barriers to protect them. That looks stupid. And then I love the bit about they're gonna put do not block intersection signs on Manor, okay? So that intersection won't be blocked. I've never seen those work. You can go anywhere around here. I can't get out on Manor or onto the ridge half the time because people are blocking the street because they don't want to wait for another stoplight. Okay, the traffic study was very interesting. The assumption was that 10% of the traffic 308 vehicles additional a day, is going to go on north on Timber, okay? If you look at the configuration, if they're coming out of the development, they have to turn left on Manor, and then in another 100 feet, turn left onto Timmeret, hit 3 stop signs before they hit the ridge. Knowing no human nature, you come out on Manor, you go, hey, straight shot, no stop signs, I'm going. So I'm sure at least an extra 100 vehicles a day on Manor. We've got a lot of traffic now. The speed limit's 25 miles an hour. We have children playing in the street, and no one does 25. Thank you. That's a very big fact. And I think the one man who was talking about the church, you are certainly welcome to come and sit on my front porch anytime during rush hour and count the cards yourself. I'll give you beer if you like. Thank you.
I'll feed you dinner. Just come on by.
Hi, good evening, Chris Elo, 46 Timber Drive, Munster. Just a couple thoughts. How many employees do you think there'll be employed?
Phase 2, at 300,000 feet, we would expect probably a little over
1,000 employees. Okay.
less than Munster actually.
So, I mean, a thought is on the Fisher North exit, right, or entrance, maybe make that employee only, entrance only. So that way, yes, it's gonna be, traffic, but at least some of the clients, customers, maybe can go to the south or the Common Avenue exit, to Maple Leaf, will help with traffic. Because again, I think, development's gonna happen one way or another, different things are gonna come up. I think the only way to alleviate some of that traffic is to, restrict some of the entrance to it. And then also maybe potentially, if they're gonna move Munster, the public works, if you're thinking, you have Manor. I mean, I think part of the thing is just to look at this thing in whole versus piecemeal, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Let's look at this whole thing. Because right now you have Manor, which is half the train. And if you can cut Manor, get all the way down to public works and do another entrance that way, that would help out also. Okay, versus going through Fisher. My concern is, I don't know what's going on in phase 3, but I know before you talked about Illinois connection. Is that still even talked about? Having the connection from that light that north on Lansing right there?
Not at this time. We're not discussing the connection to Illinois. Could it happen in the future? Perhaps.
Okay. But a connection through all the way through Fisher and Wentworth or Berman? Right. I mean, that would be an issue, I think. Okay. Hopefully we can avoid that. But again, just a couple thoughts. Again, just employee entrance only on Fisher, customers, clients through the east side of Common.
Thank you. Same thing, sign in please, and then name and address for the public.
My name is Barbara Whitaker, 1921 Alta Vista, Munster. I'm arriving a little bit late into this whole project, unfortunately. I've been kind of aware of it ongoing. My husband was an equity member of the club. And I know over the years, they had a lot of difficulty trying to sell it, or it had gone up and down and sideways. So it was finally sold, and that was nice. And I had informal conversations with members of the town and civic leaders about that property, and I just always heard, well, it's zone commercial, and I didn't pursue it any further at that time. First of all, I don't understand why it was zoned commercial. And when I pick up my Tribune the last month, there were two major articles about trends of what people are doing to country clubs and golf courses around the country, because golf courses are going out of fashion. This is nice property. So the two things that appeared in the Chicago Tribune, one was they were taking a golf course and making it all into public space. And the other was that they were turning it into residential because they found that they needed more residential space. Well, as I looked at and lived in Munster for 25 years, I see this was the only piece of kind of nice property in Munster. It had trees, it had grass, it had water. It was inaccessible, difficulty. But I just think that the Munster leadership is missing the boat by allowing this property to go commercial. I mean, and when I just sat in this meeting, the first one I've ever attended, and heard all these complications about variance and how high, and and then I see, oh, we're gonna have a nice water there, park. Who's gonna get to that? Just the people that work there, or the people that are clients that come and go? I mean, we need a lovely space for the public to enjoy. It could be much more, and just to turn that into more offices. I look down Calumet Avenue and I see a lot of empty space that's just blank farmland. They're building beautiful, beautiful McMansions around there. I mean, if people want to build McMansions on flat, ugly land, well, that's good. I think Munster is just looking for money myself. And they're taking this last piece of property that has some, ecological, scenic value and making it into commercial. That, to me, who's going to be able to even get to that lake there? So, I know it's late in the game, but I'm listening for the first time and hearing all about variances and conditions they have to have, this and that, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into this all the way around, but I think it's a big mistake. I guess that's it.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Same thing, I'll have you please sign in and then.
Hi, Deanne Holsey, 1445 Coventry Lane, Munster. And I thought I could talk and write at the same time, and I cannot.
It's 9:40.
Okay, it's way past my bedtime. Question, one about the environmental aspect, and I am not a tree hugger, but I lost a hell of a lot of golf balls in the back nine there. So there is a lot of nature back there. There are eagles that nest. And I have seen them pick up the bunny in front of me and swoop away. So what happens to what has been living there for a very, very long time? And for those of us who grew up here, our fathers took us clay shooting out there and stuff like that too. So there's also the environmental aspect of what's in what I'm going to call the lake on the front nine, because there's some nasty stuff down there. And then my biggest question concerns the airport. There's already been a plane that has crashed into that site, Champaign Tony Lima.
Yeah, PGA.
Yes. And so what happened? You're building 3- and 4-story buildings, and I don't understand how, when a plane lands and all that height stuff, but that's something that would be of concern. We've already had planes land on Calumet Avenue here too when they could not make it to the runway. So has that been addressed, and have you talked to the airport lately to see what's going on there too?
I would assume the buildings would all be, building on Midway Airport.
Yeah, yeah, that's that's all part of the approval process. Well, let me start with Barbara, you and I talked about. And you raised some really good comments. One of the big reasons we're not addressing phase 3 right now, I would agree there, and part of the existing zoning, it's not just all commercial, it's commercial and residential townhouse. Big trend in developments of these kind of commercial parks are mixed use, residential and commercial. There's a big residential demand in Munster, we're aware of that. It could be senior living, could be age restricted. There's a number of things that could be done in the context of the existing zoning without having to change zoning. But I just want to emphasize again, we're not looking for variances and waivers on zoning or land use or density. Our density is way below what we're doing. In terms of accessing that lake, we are proposing that lake to be publicly accessible. These will be public roads. This will be an extension of the Pensy Greenway system. We have a lake to the north of our development that is larger than the lake at Centennial Park. We envision that to be opened up to access from the Pensy Greenway with view corridors. The problem with this property right now, you can't see it. You can't even get to it. So there's a treasured asset back here. And once we can start to unlock these view corridors and the accessibility to the public, this becomes a tremendous asset for the town of Munster. And it's not all about the money. It's not all about generating great tax revenue. Although, let's be honest, it's the tax revenue that allows the infrastructure to be developed to create these parks and to create these greenways and the public access. So this is typically a case in point where it's the private developer and we're putting private capital, our private capital into this project for public benefit. So, you know, we have to just work together and I'm glad that we have this dialogue because I think those things are all, you know, all very important. In terms of, I forget what was one of the last questions. Airport, yeah. Yeah, airport. So we're, the biggest problem with the airport is the overhead power lines that exist in this area. I mean, these are 150 feet, 200 feet high. We're at 3 and 4 story. I mean, I think that the maximum height in the CD4B, I believe, is 4 stories. So we're certainly not going over 4 stories. So these are relatively low rise, open, you know, structures where we are trying to maintain some of the natural landscape. There is a lot of wildlife here. I grew up here. I spent a lot of time in that country club as a kid. I swam in those ponds when you're not supposed to. I saw Tony Lima's plane go down. I was there that day when that happened. So, I mean, I have a lot of reverence for the Lansing Country Club, having grown up in Lansing, gone to high school in Lansing. So, you know, we are going to do everything we can to preserve some of that natural beauty. We are working very close with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, clearing all their hurdles. They have restrictions and requirements. We're maintaining wetlands. We're maintaining all plant life that is related to wetlands. Any mitigation we do, we are adding to the Indiana Dunes Wetland Foundation. So, I mean, we're very much in tune with the environment.
Gary, we don't get a lot of obviously residents here, and we're very thankful to have people here and give their opinion. Can you kind of explain what you envision on what kind of businesses are going to go into development? It's not going to be manufacturing, it's not going to be warehouses, it's going to be higher end professional office buildings, medical, as you were explaining before.
Correct. Our vision is professional office related to healthcare primarily. We have not done any real substantial marketing yet because we've just cleared the hurdle on working on access with NIPSCO and with PepsiCo and NICD. So it's really difficult we don't like to market properties until we have access because you just shoot yourself in the foot. But yes, what we see is primarily some of the very early discussions we have. Munster is emerging as a real preferred destination for healthcare. I mean, you can see it on Calumet Avenue. It's, you can see it in Crown Point down around 231 and 65, where Franciscan has made a very large commitment. So Munster has the opportunity to really bring in more commerce in lifestyle healthcare. One of the trends that we see, we mentioned golf course redevelopment before, but one of the trends that is really emerging are healthcare villages. And that's where you have a lot of these professional healthcare practices in conjunction with age-restricted or senior housing. And with the walkability, the trails, it becomes a lifestyle. We also we have 14 of these projects in development around the country. A big thing that we see is the ability to provide housing for young professionals in the healthcare industry. That's the #1 sought after position by the millennial class. With the growing number of baby boomers entering the healthcare, there are significant jobs being created in medical science, health science, resident physicians, nurses. So when you cater to that kind of profession, you are bringing in future residents into the town. Healthcare, the profession on the average make 23 or 24% more than the population at large. So it's a profession that a lot of communities covet. Munster would do well to have more housing options for young professionals. Right now they don't.
Same thing, I'll have you sign in, name and address.
My name's Lawrence Seba. I live at 8608 Holman Avenue. And my main concern is the traffic. You guys are doing these surveys on traffic surveys, but nobody, we got South Shore coming in here. Nobody knows how much traffic that's gonna bring in. And now we're gonna have more workers and construction. I have a hard time sometimes getting out of my driveway now on Holman Avenue because of cars. And there is supposed to be no trucks on Holman as of right now. And last week, 2 semis from Pepsi cut through. I watched, no police, no one around to catch it. So my main concern is the traffic. When I moved in, there was a police officer that sat there and caught people all the time. But since I've been there, the last 3 or 4 years, hasn't been an officer down Holman Avenue writing out 1 ticket for nobody. And these cars, like people were saying, they don't do 25. They're not. Put a police officer down there and we can get some revenue for the town that way. I'm gonna come to the safety meeting and I'm gonna ask how many tickets have been issued lately. And I know what I'm gonna hear.
We had the same survey done in our neighborhood. We found out that 90% of the cars speeding through our subdivision were other residents that live in our subdivision. That's the problem. Wasn't a lot of cut through
That's not
traffic.
the case ours.
No, yeah.
It's all Illinois.
It's all Illinois.
Hello, how you doing? My name's John Bogaski. I live on 8512 Holman Avenue. I could basically piggyback off of exactly what you just said. I'm outside almost every single day, either doing yard work or cutting my grass, and it's Illinois license plates. I see them every single time, and they're speeding down Holman Avenue, and I'm talking like 45, 50 miles an hour. I mean, it's ridiculous. And my next door neighbor actually told me, you know what the street is where he said that cop usually sits? Paris? No, it's not Paris. It's
Evergreen?
no.
Sycamore.
I don't know. She
He lives
right now.
on Sycamore.
Yeah, well,
Hey,
my next
park that car on the corner of Holman Avenue and I guarantee people will slow down. But he lives 3-4 houses down, parks in front of his house, which that doesn't do us any good.
Yeah, my next door neighbor told me the cop would sit at Lawndale and he would catch people every single day, right? Almost 15, 20 tickets, because it's not even just the speeding, people are blowing stop signs. And when I'm outside and I'm looking, because, I mean, you could hear the car, it's like 25 miles an hour, and I hear engines revving, and I turn around and look, always a Illinois license plate. And I'm not just blaming it on them, you know, I don't want to put all the blame game on the Illinois residents, but it's an issue. It's an issue over there. And as far as what you were said, I think you mentioned Evergreen Park, like building that up. I mean, there's nothing even there right now. So as far as like making it look better than what it is, I mean, there's nothing there. So I was just wondering like what the plan is there. And as far as like with the speeding and traffic is a huge issue on Holman Avenue. I mean, getting out of my driveway, I mean,
On Forest Avenue too.
yeah, I mean, it's bad. So I don't know, you know, if you need a town official, yeah, I mean, you're more than welcome, just like the other residents. You can come and sit on my front porch and watch all the cars drive by at 60 miles an hour and blow stop signs all day. So I'm totally with him. I mean, get a cop out there, write tickets. If you want to make money for Munster, let's do it that way.
Yeah.
But that's my concern, so.
Might be difficult. All right, so it's-
I see somebody blow right through the stop sign last week. Didn't even stop, didn't hit brakes, didn't see no brake lights, nothing. Just went right through that stop sign.
Every day.
Same thing, I'll have you sign in and then say your name, address, your restaurant. Yeah, you could adjust that right from down.
My name is Jeanette Jankos. I live currently at 236 Timrick. So mine is one of the houses that's going to become Evergreen Park, and I've lived there for quite a long time. So I understand about the traffic. I understand about all that. As a matter of fact, my son got hit by a car one time crossing the street. But regardless, I have been dealing with Saxon Partners, specifically Gary, for over a year now. He's planned everything out. He showed me everything that they're going to do, and I honestly feel, even though I have to leave, I honestly feel that that's going to be a plus, especially in Evergreen Park. Right now, there's not anything there, but in the past, there was a basketball court. People still do go there. Lots of people walk their dogs there. Lots of people use the facilities over there. It's just not actively being used. If you can change the way Timrick is, then it stops anybody from my neighbors who were on the other side, the Hotters. They actually did have somebody come through their front yard, which is why they put a guardrail up. So all of that is true, but I think the proposals that they have are going to be very good. And it's going to kind of calm it down a little bit. That's just my personal opinion, but we couldn't ask for anybody better than to work with them.
Thank you. Anyone else? I think we have a hand up online.
Michael Gepfer, 10380 Oxford Place. As a almost 20-year resident who has driven up to the train many times, I think we all know that Holman, Timrick, and Fisher are kind of the South Siders' main route from the train station. So, sympathetic to the traffic that does exist there. And a valid point, wondering what traffic might be in the future. But looking at this design, I see that Timrick is now disconnected from Fisher, which no longer makes it a straight shot, and may actually discourage people from using it, especially from this development. It seems to push people instead of heading north, but pushes them east towards Calumet. So that may actually mean less traffic through the residential areas, which is great. But getting back to that increase of traffic on Calumet, we just spent how many millions of dollars to get traffic off of Calumet by connecting 45th. And now we're looking at thousands more, cars, and traffic, not only the thousands of employees, but if these are going to be any type of retail or customer based, then that's even more. Why are we not looking at utilizing 45th or even Wentworth as other options to access this location? Why are we putting more stress on Calumet after we just spent so much money to move traffic off of it? And then finally, I think it was Mr. Kulturitis that mentioned and asked if this was residential or if it was all commercial. And I thought I heard the presenter say that this was just commercial, but then I heard him say that this is zoned as residential and could be residential and commercial. Is there a discrepancy there? Just to clarify. Thanks.
Phase 2 is commercial, phase 3 is possibly mixed use or residential.
Gotcha.
And Michael, we haven't ruled out any other options on, in the future phase 3 on access to that property and which way a road might go. Yes.
I know that in discussions way back, when we first, I think this was first, just the idea was even floated. Well, first of all, I have huge concerns about the traffic overall. It kind of gives me heartburn when we start talking 1,000 employees, and that's just for that phase. You're right. Someone mentioned that the train will be operational. I have gone down the road many, many times. I try to drive to town at different times of day, and I call myself the pace car, and people are like eating my bumper because I'm going the speed limit, and they can't wait to get around me. So, I mean, I know it is a real problem, but the connection to Wentworth, that was something that we brought up immediately as something that was not, I mean, maybe if it just went into the development, but it didn't carry on into Munster, if there's some way to do that. The problem is every corridor that we find that we have a connection to Illinois, it always tends to be the area where the speeding is great. It's like a getaway route, if you will. And most residents I speak to say, do not make another connection to Illinois, please. So that's what I've heard over and over. As far as residential, the original plan had, if I remember, it was apartment buildings, if I recall, and we had said that was taken out after that, because there were some of us on the council that said not really interested in covering that area with apartment buildings. So, I mean, it was a mixed use. So I don't know, I always say that we're saving phase 3. That gives me a little bit of heartburn as well, because if we give the approval for this phase as just commercial only, and then we give the connection, and then that much farther down the road to, well, we're here, mixed use is needed, and I hear the young professionals, I'm still, and I know most of the time that means apartments, I'm not sold on that at all, so I'm a little bit nervous about what might be thrown at us once they get approval A, B, C. I think Mr. Warfel has been a very good person to work with, but down the line, these are all issues kind of giving you a little bit of past discussions and what I'm thinking of that worries me going forward.
Thank you. Before I close the public.
And then one other thing, there is on Wentworth Avenue that the original entrance to this club property has a light there.
Yeah.
A traffic light. Don't you think that would be better than what they're proposing for our area? And then not only that, to the south of the lake, they can make another entrance into or exit onto Wentworth Avenue without a problem.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything to say before I close the public hearing? Going once, twice, no one online, Tom?
No.
3 times. I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission. We have a item on the agenda. Just want to see what the consensus of the board is, or if there's a lot you'd like to consider or discuss.
It's a lot. It's hard to say.
I'll start. So I'm still challenged. I understand, Mr. Morphin, why you're doing this phase 2, phase 3 thing to maintain the flexibility. I'm uncomfortable with a development this size and this much magnitude and looking at it that way. Based on your preliminary infrastructure development plan, you have something already laid out. So I understand keeping lots, flexible, if you will, but I'm still of the opinion that this should be looked at as a whole. I also understand the economics, but at some point, this infrastructure is going to have to be worked on, and there's some economies of scale in doing it all at one time as opposed to doing it piecemeal. Putting something, having to tear it out, redo it again, I just have some uncomfortable concerns with regards to that. Also, with regards to the train, this is for you, Tom. Is that a grade level crossing at Fisher currently?
Yes.
So we have that additional information. The Timrick thing with the folks showed up about this, it's going to force a lot of, traffic down Manor. Regarding the parks, Mr. Roble, did you buy 2 houses or 3 houses? If a car does come around the proposed plan at Timrick, stops at that T, is he looking at a house or at green space?
Looking at a house.
Okay, has there been any discussions or thought on your point about kind of eliminating that? As the young lady mentioned, there has been some past history of challenges with buildings. Also, just to have that amount of concern for that location, because it's going to have a lot of action there.
Yeah, let me address your first question first with regard to infrastructure. There would be no change in infrastructure with the phase 3, except for the signalization and turn lanes at Fisher Calumet. That would be it. The roadways wouldn't change.
Well, I disagree, because of the way I'm looking at it is if you add that much more pressure, the traffic study says everything is okay based on 300, not 1 million square feet.
We're not going to, it was 720 maximum. The zoning allows for over 1 million, but that's not our intent. But the only thing that would trigger infrastructure improvements over phase 2 would be the intersection at Fisher Calumet.
Right.
And we're not prepared to even go there until we get to that point.
And that's going to be expensive.
You wouldn't approve phase, oh yeah.
Yeah, it'll be expensive.
Yeah.
And we also didn't talk about amount of traffic that would be pushed down into Maple Leaf, because Maple Leaf is already going to have another issue. Because the concern, and what I'm going to request from the town is all of the studies that were done on Calumet Avenue as far as traffic for all of those developments, and look at combining those to provide us a global aspect of what's going to happen from Main Street all the way to the Borman. Because again, we're doing piecemeal projects going, okay, Maple Leaf is this, Centennial Village is this, and we keep doing that. And all I know is that it's just getting more and more congested, and there's just nothing else we can do. We can't even get curb cuts removed, but we're going to put more traffic on it. And that's a good thing. And that's what happens when you have development. And I'm good for that. But I'm of the opinion the structure or the infrastructure, what I talk about isn't the storm on your development. I'm talking about the roads getting out, because of all the things that you said at Munster is great, and why, this is a hot place to be in your, diatribe as it relates to the medical facilities. We're going to want to bring people in and out, and they're going to come down the corner, and they're going to have to come down. And there's a lot of studies and work that's been done by the municipality to try to enhance Calumet Avenue South and Ridge Road as it meets Calumet Avenue. But if we keep pumping more traffic from the south, that impacts that as well. So I'm looking at it from a holistic perspective, because this in and of itself, where it is, very outstanding, like it kind of understand, want to still see it as this is the development, this is what we're going to, work on based upon your, market studies. Here's what it's going to look like, and then let's start going. But in little phases, that leaves a lot of unknown, and it just makes me uncomfortable. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Let me answer your second question, Timrick. Right now, I think there's something we all agree on, is that the current structure of Timrick, dead-ending into Fisher and Manor doesn't work. It's a dangerous intersection. It's not under control. We looked at the roundabout as an idea. That took up too much space. We thought it was not safe from a pedestrian crossing standpoint. Somebody mentioned this, I think it might have been the person that called in. The whole design of being able to take Timrick the way it does is to slow things down, stop it. There'll also be a 4-way stop at Manor and Fisher. We're trying to slow things down. And that is a problem. There's the traffic that runs through here. I know nobody's gonna stop the traffic between Illinois and Indiana. We're not gonna stop it. You got three ways to go. You either take Ridge Road, you take 45th, or you cut through Terrace, through these neighborhoods, and you get yourself down in the back way. Those will always exist. People will always find a way to get from point A to point B. And we're not gonna change that. You're not gonna change that. Nobody here is gonna change that. But what we can do, and I think what I learned from tonight, is that maybe we look at this neighborhood and these intersections in a larger view and figure out a way. And, you know, Illinois, Indiana, or connection to Illinois, that's always one of them. There's pros and cons to that. But there is a solution to manage that traffic, make it slower and make it safer. We can, you know, we can all do that. I mean, there's a way to do that. We just have to work together and figure it out. But right now, I don't think it works very well.
I got a question.
Well, we close the public hearing. You can send emails to the town. Well, next month will be open.
And I also said before, we have a public outreach website set up. It's ready to go. We haven't launched it. I want everybody to see it, but I think if everybody had access to that website, they would see, in addition to all the several pounds of material we dumped on Tom's lap, we have several graphics, illustrations, concepts, ideas. We're trying to encourage that back and forth. So if we get good ideas from the community, we can incorporate those into, you know, further design.
Can we put a link on the website and residents can click on it?
To view this material?
Well,
So that's our intent, is to make it.
Right, to get a link that click on your website right off the town website.
I'd have to talk to Dustin. If somebody's interested in it.
Yeah, I have a question. Carrie, I know at one time, and someone mentioned it here too, we had, it had been talked about that connecting to 45th would actually be, you know, might be one of our strongest options, but I know there are hurdles, just like there are with the others, with NICD, not Nick, well, yes, NICD,
Yeah,
but NIPSCO, I mean, all kinds of things. So, but that seems like when you mentioned, you said, it triggered something when you said about the same amount of employees as Munster High. I went, oh no, we're gonna have 1,000 employees going there and 1,000 students, employees. I mean, that's a mess. I don't know if you've ever seen.
Yeah,
that
we spent a lot of time there.
at school time. So now we're just doubling that. So I don't know what the hurdle is, you know, as far as all of the legwork and everything you have to do to get to 45th. To me, that seems like that takes it. You could come down Whitworth if you're coming from Illinois. You could go to 45th. If you're coming from the south side of Munster, you can get to 45th without putting it on that kind of the center of town.
Yeah, one of the things, early on, one of the things we looked at was taking Margot Lane from the south and extending it directly north under the CN Railway, right into the middle of our site. That would help, but that's a very expensive proposition. So, and working with CN Railroad is difficult, as the town well knows. So, I mean, that was
So
an idea.
I forgot about the railroad, but yeah,
Yeah.
it just seems like that would solve a lot of issues, but.
So where do we stand? Ladies and gentlemen up here.
I'm tired. I make the motion to table this until we could have the entire development plan submitted as a whole.
We have a motion.
I'll second it open for discussion.
Absolutely, plenty of discussion. Anyone like to discuss? Mr. Baker?
In my motion, it's just as I stated earlier, Councilwoman, I think is a big enough plan that we should at least have a general idea as a whole submitted at one time of what we're looking to accomplish without leaving a gaping hole, especially since I didn't mention that if you do development in phase 3, there might be some requirement for additional storm retention. That would be in Illinois. Having some exposure trying to deal between the state of Indiana and the state of Illinois, that's not happening anytime easy. So some of those concerns as it relates to how this thing is eventually going to evolve is the premise of that motion.
So basically, knowing the plan could change, it could be, if you draw it all commercial, or you could draw it your phase 2 commercial, phase 3, your mixed plan? Is that what you're looking for?
Correct. Well, I'm looking at it, it's done. It's on the development plan here on the infrastructure. And if that's it, but then that should entail and trigger how much traffic, what's going to happen to Fisher, what's going to happen to Maple Leaf. It provides a more holistic perspective in my opinion.
Can I just make a comment, Bill? That whole development plan has been submitted. The traffic study contemplates the entire development. But what they're asking for tonight is just simply the approval of the plat for that phase 1, 2, or phase 2. So they have the whole development plan. It's there.
But it hasn't been approved and hasn't gone through the process.
But there is no process for approval of that overall development plan outside of approving the plat.
So
And that's what they're asking for. And I'm saying I want the whole thing, not half.
So you want them to plat the rest of
The plat could stay the way it is. The platting is just doing the lots. He can come back later and want to replat the phase 3 if he has somebody that wants to only buy a third of it. And then right now he's platting those buildings, those 4, so he can put those out and potentially sell them if somebody wants to buy it versus leasing it. And then they just need to have that piece of property already designated. Okay, it's my motion. So
Any other discussions? We have a motion and a second. This is still discussion before I call it to a vote. The only thing I have to say is, will the petitioner, all the conditions that staff has recommended, would you have that incorporated in a document for next month? Or you agree to everything that Tom presented in all your?
I mean, I would just say that our revisions to the plans that we're requesting are very minor. We've already discussed them with Kimberly Warren. They've already said, yeah, we'll do it. They asked, do you want us to submit revised documents the day of? I said, no, I don't want to bring new documents the day of. We'll just use the documents that we have, approved conditionally, and then you can revise. So that's already been agreed to. And they're very minor. Like I said, they're not going to medically change the site plan. Anyway. So that's not a big problem.
Staff's position is going through all this, the staff was good with the presentation of this plat being divided like this.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, there are a couple waivers that they're requesting, which would be one commission might grant those waivers as well. Again, I just want to reiterate, we have seen a development plan for the entire project. It's included in the report with the exhibits. The development plan is going to stand. Now, if they decide to plat this phase 3 different from what's being shown in that development plan, they'll submit a new development plan with the plat for phase 3. So we have the whole picture right now. They could end up changing it, but again, when they change that, it'll be presented back to the plan commission at the time that they plat. So,
Why don't we, if you have it, why aren't we seeing like on this right here?
well, that's not shown on this.
It's on
this
it's in the
image.
other part. So that's right, it's on the other part.
I make one more comment. There's a couple mechanisms here to, I think, solve this. Number one, the reason that we're only going for phase 2 plat is to take this in steps so that we don't try to lay such a huge project on the community, on the town at one time. So that's one check. The other one is we're still negotiating a development agreement with the town. So anything we want to put in that development agreement to phase it, take care of phase 3, and right now we're not trying to do anything that's not allowed by the current zoning. So we're staying within that zoning. So no matter what we do, that's not going to change. But I think the mechanism to might incorporate some of the comments in future and this and that will be in the development agreement, which I think a lot of that is already laid out. And that's being reviewed right now.
Are just you and Dustin reviewing this or?
Dave Westland has been reviewing it. Yeah.
I'm just wondering at what point the council is gonna.
I haven't actually participated in any of the discussions for reviewing it. As far as I know, it's there's been like a preliminary set of discussions between Dustin and Dave Wilson. But,
Yeah, it's also with your council, Barnes and Thornburg, they're reviewing all of it.
But if it meets code on 1 and 2 or whatever, and phase 3 is gonna meet our code or whatever it is.
My motion still stands, so you can tell me how many times you want to put the
I'm just
puzzle
curious,
together,
you know?
and I'm still of the
Yeah.
opinion that this is not done. If it's done, great, I like it, I think it's great, let's do the whole thing. I still can't, grasp why we're doing it, hell, we don't even have a way in and out yet.
Well, I was to say, that's the part that's.
And it's
really
all a
hard.
contingency on that, but I just have an uncomfortable scenario. Well, planning commission said it was okay, and then all of a sudden, all things are gonna go off of that particular statement, and that makes me a little uncomfortable at this time. Maybe we have to have a study session, I don't get it, but if you have development plans and things I don't know about, it'd have been nice before Friday afternoon to get 7 documents with 3,000 pages. That's great, I appreciate that. I'm still not comfortable with the traffic stuff. So I'm still staying.
Motion. You have a second, right?
Yeah, I did.
All right, is there any other discussion?
I guess I'm just, the public is here speaking if they have traffic concerns. And, so what are we approving? Like, are we just ignoring that? I mean, because I also live in a neighborhood where, I constantly see, people run stop signs going too fast in front of my children's yard. So I do sympathize with that. So what are we doing with that information right now?
Beth, do you have any discussions?
No, Mr. Gregory just wants to table this until next month.
That's what that was the motion. Right. Yeah, so it's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Well, just make sure, he said until it's complete, but it's tabling that if they don't think they're coming back for complete next month, then I don't think that yours was for them to come back with a 100% completed.
The whole development as it's being presented, it should be set up for the vote, and don't give me all the development and then ask for only a phase 2 approval. I'm not comfortable with that. Whether it takes next month or maybe that's a challenge, I don't know. Maybe I need more information, but as of I sit right now, that's the concern.
Can I ask just for a clarification? When you say that, when you're asking for them to bring back the development plan for the entire project, or you,
So I'm gonna get a staff report from you, so you don't have to go through the whole process. That's gonna say, this is the development plan, this is how they want to lay it out, this is how we're gonna get in and out. This is the development agreement's finished. You're comfortable with all the traffic studies, and we vote on it like we do on every other development.
And all the planning and done.
Yeah, I'm
Well, the
guessing.
planning is done. I mean, you can have one lot that's phase 3 and call that one lot, come back and replat it.
That's what it
later.
is.
I mean, it's
That's
not-
what it is tonight. That's
That's not what we're voting.
But phase 3 is one lot in the subdivision plan.
And we're, according to this, we're voting on phase 2.
No, we're, the phase,
Okay, am I wrong?
so I think you're right. Phase 2 is the plating of the development lots. Phase 3 is it's not a development lot that's being platted, it's the remainder of the site. So yeah, I think you're both correct in this instance, but I guess what I'm wondering is, it sounds to me like, I just want to have clarity to the applicant. We want them to have the entire site platted into its final condition with.
I don't want the contingency of, we're gonna, phase 3, we don't know what we're doing.
Tom, can you pull up the plat?
Do you think by next month, developmental standards will be done between your attorneys and the town attorneys?
We're waiting on the town. We've submitted the development agreement, we've submitted the master plan development, we've submitted everything.
And your NIPSCO deal just got done now too.
We just-
So
yes.
you don't have A and B, and that's all you need for A and B.
Right.
1A, 1B, how to get in and out. You need the NIPSCO thing done. And what else?
Okay, if you look at what we submitted, this is our.
Really? It's not done.
Well,
Of course it's not. We're not asking for development plan approval. What we're asking for is the plat. It's all tied together.
Right.
Without the plat, we can't fix these locations and fix our development agreement with NIPSCO and NICD until we nail down these 2 points. So that the plat is essential to nail down these 2 points, and then we nail down the
The
cross.
2 points being what?
The entrance of Fisher Street and the entrance of Maple Leaf Boulevard.
Who's making that contingency?
Well, we have to get the right-of-way agreements with.
Right.
With.
And then we'll give them to you unless you're platted?
Well, we have, yeah, they have to meet, they have to tie together.
I think that's the first time that that's become more crystal clear, I guess.
No,
Is that whole.
This point
portion.
and that point.
We need the legal document to go there since we're.
We have that, legal's all done.
But it's a chicken and egg. We have to eventually do both.
So,
And I think we're there. But if you look at what we submitted, you see block A, that's the second phase. So that's already part of the subdivision plan.
so I guess to your point, to the point that the residents are here, to Bill's point, if we can give approval to plat those things so you can go and get the approvals and get everything lined up with NIPSCO and NICD, but we can still say
Traffic study.
no, I'm
Yeah,
saying
I'm-
no, but like to all those, to the ends, getting in, how we're getting in, like if it's looking like this is gonna be a traffic nightmare. I mean, just because we plat that doesn't mean, that's my, I think that's the fear, so we plat that and it's like, well, you platted it, so now you won't let us get in, now what, you know what I mean? So, because the residents have a lot of.
Let's make the preliminary plat approval conditional.
Yes, that,
on
I'm
all
just,
those things.
I mean, I know that was said in the beginning, but I just, so that everybody's completely clear that saying yes to platting does not finish these roads the way they're.
Oh, we know that,
submitted
yeah,
here.
I mean, there's a
Doesn't-
lot, yeah, there's a lot to be done, but
Yeah.
this is a necessary step to continue that process. So we can make the approval of this plat, which includes phase 3, it's on there, but we just show it as one lot. We're not
Right.
looking for any approvals on that whatsoever, but we can make this conditional on all these other things happening. I mean, we're happy with that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. What this does is it fixes those entry points, but everything else, how Timrick connects to Manor, how Fisher connects to Manor. Phase 1, that's phase 1A. And the recommendation that we have is that this plat be approved upon, a final approval of that phase 1A. So part of the reason why this is moving forward is because this is on Saxon Partners property. The other piece of it, Evergreen Park, that's on the town property. Okay, so we still have to approve that no matter what. Maple Leaf Crossing, that's on the town right away on the Pensy Greenway, so we have to approve that as well. So we still have plenty of levers and plenty of leverage on this project. It's not as though if we discover something in the subsequent meeting or phase that, there's no going back from this.
Right.
So, and I guess to Bill's question about, all these contingencies, at some point, some approval will have to be made, whether it's the town council approving a development agreement. That development agreement would have to be contingent upon the plan commission approving all these things. So we talked a little bit at the preliminary hearing about how there's all these sort of overlapping approvals that it's a lot of complexity. And we're trying to figure out the best way, maybe the most rational way to try to move some things forward and make it a little bit more real. And that's sort of why we are recommending that the plat just be approved, because it's one step towards getting an approval. It's not the final approval. But again, like I said, whatever step we take as that initial step is still going to be conditioned upon all these other things happening. I don't know if there's a method that we could use to just have everything just approve at once, and I don't know if we want to either.
Well, I was thinking that because if we approve the road, I'm just trying to flip it. So if we went with 1A, B first, we approve the roads, we might be saying, but you're not gonna tell us what's in there? Like, we don't know, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. It can become a circular, sort of a circular issue. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So I just, but I agree with Rachel. I don't want the residents to think that we are not, I'm very concerned about the traffic, and so it'll be a continuing conversation, that we're not taking comments and then just saying, yeah, thanks, that was great. You know, this vote solidifies what you may not think is right for your neighborhood. So,
But once again, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion before we call for a vote? Is your motion and second still on the floor after all this discussion? Yours is, I know.
well, I am seeing, why don't we withdraw your second? I guess you can.
We have a motion and
I mean,
second, just have
yeah,
to
yes.
Yeah. Got a motion second, table discussion. Now that's me.
Okay.
We're voting to table it until they have the complete, everything complete. That was the motion. And a second.
I just specifically request that what everything complete means.
I would ask Bill to.
Well, I'm not to deny it. I mean, I look right now, everything in this right here on the plan that says, this is a part of the staff report, Gary, and I'm sure you got this. The applications for the approval of the plat of phase 2 of the development. Here's all the things that aren't done yet, phase 1A, 1B, and 3. And I look at 3 and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 buildings. And you're saying all in one lot, like, all right, 8 buildings on one lot, you own it, you can do that, I suppose. So that's the submittal. But I'm going to assume you're going to put 8 additional buildings in phase 3 on there, and the amount of traffic and amount of people in and out of this space is going to be contingent on that being successful, which I think it will be. So let's just make sure that we have the infrastructure on the public side, which means more work for staff, that is done. And that should be in the development plan, and that should all be up front, and you should know exactly what it is and how it works. And that's my thought on what that entails.
So just to clarify, when phase 3,
I'm usually pretty succinct.
before any buildings could be built on phase 3, that would have to come back to the planning commission for another subdivision. Because
And streets, you might want to move the streets, but at least you know how much streets you're getting, what that's all going to entail. At least there's something.
Right, and that's in that development plan that it's gonna.
It's not what you put in front of me, at least how I'm reading it. Now, you can say, yes, I'm going to approve just that, and there's no in and out, and I'm just going to do that, and it's contingent upon all this other stuff being done.
Right.
And my whole thing is just, how long is that? And why don't we just do it all at once? Because then we know what kind of infrastructure, how many houses, what kind of traffic's going to go in. We can talk about Manor, we can talk about the train, we can talk about all this other stuff. But that's, I'm missing why this is so important now, that all that other stuff isn't included like most other developments. The only thing I can think of is money and not want to pay for the infrastructure now upfront. And you guys can work that out in the development plan. That's just wordsmanship. But I want to say, this is what Saxon wants to put here. Yeah. But that's not what the staff report, in my opinion, is requesting. Therefore, I'm asking for it to sit for a month until that's clarified. And if it comes back and saying, hey, this is it again, then that's fine, you vote on it. But I'm thinking you don't have a development plan. I'm still not comfortable.
We do have a development plan, but I understand what you're saying, Bill. I think what you're saying is that let's clarify, let's take a month and let's clarify what's in the ask. So that it's clear. And it is a phase development plan. We did submit the entire phase, but we're not asking for any approvals on phase 3. We're just not. We think it's better for everybody if we cross that bridge when we get to it. if we try to put together a full development plan, phase 1A, 1B, 2, and 3, all the infrastructure that goes with it, I just think that that's too premature, because we don't really know whether it makes more sense on phase 3 to do more commercial, or does it make sense to do residential per the existing zoning? You know, I think we need to think about that.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it's just drawn, it's not built. You don't have to put the infrastructure in, you word the document to the point you don't have to do it. So the development still goes in phases like you want. I want this to be successful.
That's
This
fair,
is-
that's fair.
That's phase 3, do it that way. But here is how it's gonna connect. Here, if I go around the corner, here's how I'm gonna come and move back around, and this is how it's gonna go. As of right now, this is on a piece of paper.
I got you. I think you're looking for clarification on the phasing.
Yeah, and you develop it as you see fit based on the structure that you have this thing put together, but a lot of this has to do with what's gonna happen and how it's gonna impact Calumet Avenue at the end of the day, because this is gonna be great for this location, in my opinion, but at the end of the day, it's gonna have an impact on Calumet Avenue, and I'm still not sold on her traffic study yet, and I need some clarification on that, just for me.
Is there something maybe we can get Tom to get over to the developer about what you're looking for in traffic study, or just so we have a question answered? I mean, at least if we have a question, we can get some kind of clarity for next month, you know?
Absolutely.
So
Because that 118 pages was just stimulating.
That's 100.
It was 204.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought 182.
And I couldn't find how many vehicles per day would increase, so that's okay.
Well, I do have a question. So if we do this, say wait until next month, then are we gonna be asked to vote to approve the entire thing, or it's still gonna be just phase 2, just 2?
In my mind, it's gonna be what you see here with some
Okay.
clarification. on
Just
phasing.
2, just phase 2.
Yeah, this is a subdivision plat for the entire property. We're just, if you'll notice, the one lot, that's phase 3, we're not looking to subdivide that.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Even if we wait a month, we're still gonna be just looking for approval for the subdivision of phase 2.
And if you come back again next month, I'm gonna make the same motion, because where's the other road going through phase 3? So, I mean, at least to the point where you have to have that, because all of a sudden you can have a dead end there. I mean, I suppose you could, but then I just want to have that as a part of the big picture of what kind of the vision is.
I have one question regarding traffic. Any way you can model something and show us a model, especially at the high school time? Because I have high school kids at 7 in the morning, 7:30 and 3 o'clock, they come out of there and it's a madhouse. So at the highest points, if you can provide-
Lunchtime?
Yeah. if you
Well,
can
that's,
provide a model.
yeah, high school is probably for reference, because that's not indicative of a commercial work environment. It's a lot of kids when the bell rings, everybody leaves. It's a different.
Yeah, but it's 7:15, 7:30, when you're stacking and cars turning in there, you got kids turning in, high school, right? Yeah. At the same time. So maybe we see some kind of model of traffic, you know?
Yeah, we'll discuss that with our traffic team.
All right, motion second, everything's good, Tom, I guess. Are you good with your clarifications on what Mr. Baker is asking for next month?
Yeah,
before we adjourn?
the only trouble I have is you want us to do all the infrastructure planning for phase 3 now and submit that when we don't know exactly what we're going to provide for phase 3. That's the part I have trouble.
Well, I don't think he's asking for the infrastructure, storm sewers and that kind of stuff. I think he's looking for a concept of the roadway coming, how you envision the road coming through there.
Like that,
right?
Okay, do we want to go to Illinois?
No.
Okay, it's done.
Yeah, right.
There you go.
Right, it's done.
Well, I think it's at that.
Why don't, so maybe we just table this for a month,
That's what we just said.
and we can talk a little bit about.
I think we should clarify it again, Tom.
Well, I'm just saying, because
Is it who's on
I
first?
just want to make sure that the understanding of the board is that they're gonna come back next month and vote on this. Okay.
If I can get this before the next meeting on Friday afternoon, that'd be outstanding.
You'll have a conversation with Mr. Baker here, so after this.
Mr. Chairman, I move for a vote. At 8 a.m.
I'm heavy call.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. Okay, Councilor Miller,
Yes.
Councilor Kulturitis,
Yes.
Rachel Brannigan.
Yes.
Bill Baker.
Yes.
Bill Redd.
Yes. work with staff and we'll do whatever we can over to you to make sure this moves on next month. The next item, findings of fact, PC 22001, J. Odell of O'Brien Enterprise representing EYM Restaurant Group requesting approval of development of planning construction 3-unit commercial building, including Pizza Hut at 815 Ridge Road. Had a chance to review the finding of fact, and so what's the pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept finding facts PC 22-001.
Second motion, we have a second. All in favor? Discussion, I mean. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. The next item is PC 22003, Jane Bolton Trust request approval of preliminary plat of the Bolton addition to the town of Munster, consolidating 2 residential lots at 9817 and 9825 White Hall Garden. We have a chance to review this, and so what's the pleasure of the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept finding of facts for PC 22-003.
We have a motion to a second. Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Tom, is there any other business or additional items to discuss?
No, there's nothing.
We have a meeting coming up on the 30th.
Yes,
Right?
that's
So
it.
we want to make sure that's on there as our next scheduled meeting, you know. Has there been any other discussions with community regarding installing the light up front? Okay, you might. Because I know a bunch of neighbors have concerns and questions about making sure they improve that intersection as a condition. Which intersection?
My
By the
understanding is
way,
that,
okay, Matt.
my understanding is that they'd like to stick to the previously drafted agreement, which, although it was drafted, was never signed, but that was the consensus that we arrived at in 2018, which was that they would install the traffic signal only after certain thresholds were met.
We want them to put the traffic light on now.
Well, that can be put on as a condition on the approval.
Good on this, it wasn't, so.
Wrong.
No, I've had people mention it to me too, so. It's definitely.
Should be discussed before, so they're not blindsided by upcoming meeting if there's been some agreement talked about beforehand.
They stayed for the meeting, they would be hearing this right now, so. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, we've been communicating primarily between Dave Westland and Cheryl Zick, their attorney, on these issues. So I'll let Dave Westland know that you indicated that that was something they'd like to see. But I think it was mentioned at the last meeting.
Right. Well, because the commission talked about it, you know?
Right, yeah.
We all mentioned it at the last meeting when they were here, so. Not sure if they heard it or not, but we did mention it.
So that's June 30th at 6, is that 6?
It's going to be 6:45 because it's also a special meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
All right, that being said, we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I oppose.
You opposed? You want to stay longer, Bill?
We have sleeping bags in our cars.
Rachel, first meeting, I'm like. And the air kept cutting off. At least you're
June 30th.
sitting in the car. I know. Yeah,
I still don't
very nice
understand
chair.
why I'm doing this in phases, man, what the hell?
I'm sorry. You said June 30th, right?
See y'all. Good night.
Good
All
night.
right, nice seeing you, sir.
It's good.